Tonight, in a ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers and poisonous smiles, a woman no one ever noticed is about to commit social suicide. Elena Ward has spent her entire life being invisible. The forgotten niece, the plain wallflower, the woman powerful people look through like glass. But invisibility gave her something they never expected: eyes that see everything. And tonight, she's uncovered a betrayal so explosive it could topple a duke, or destroy her forever. One decision, one whisper, one chance to either stay safe in the shadows or step into a firestorm that will burn her world to ash. Will she speak? Or will she watch the world burn in silence? Stay until the end to see how one overlooked woman rewrites the rules of power, love, and survival. And if this story grips you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The Thornfield estate glittered like a jewel box under the November moon, every window ablaze with candlelight, every corridor humming with the carefully orchestrated chaos of high society at play. Carriages lined the circular drive, disgorging lords and ladies in silk and velvet, their laughter sharp as champagne bubbles, their eyes sharper still. Inside, the grand ballroom swirled with color and sound, musicians playing Vivaldi in the gallery, servants gliding between guests with trays of wine, and everywhere the constant undercurrent of whispered schemes and veiled insults that passed for conversation among the elite. Elena Ward stood in the corner nearest the potted palms, a position she had perfected over 23 years of attending these glittering prisons, not quite hidden, but never quite seen. The pale gray silk of her gown, modest, unremarkable, 2 seasons out of date, ensured she blended into the wallpaper. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, no jewels, no ornament. Her aunt, Lady Cecilia Thornfield, had made it abundantly clear years ago. Elena was a charity case, a distant relation permitted to attend functions only because her parents' tragic deaths had left her with nowhere else to go. She was to be grateful, quiet, and above all, invisible. So she had become a ghost. But ghosts see things the living miss. Elena's gray eyes tracked the room with the precision of a hawk. She noticed Lord Pemberton's hand lingering too long on his secretary's shoulder near the terrace doors. She saw Lady Ashford's forced smile when her husband complimented another woman's gown. She caught the Duke of Rothermere's youngest son pocketing a silver snuff box when he thought no one was looking. The ballroom was a stage, and Elena had spent years learning to read the play beneath the performance. Tonight, something was wrong. Elena felt it in the air like the charge before a lightning strike. It centered around the evening's guest of honor, Duke Adrian Blackthorne and his newly announced fiancée, Lady Vivian Ashcroft. They stood at the heart of the ballroom, the golden couple everyone had expected to unite for years. Adrian Blackthorne was 31, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic severity. His eyes were a startling shade of gray-green, intelligent and guarded. He wore his power like a second skin, his black evening coat tailored to perfection, his posture that of a man who had never doubted his place in the world. Vivian Ashcroft clung to his arm like a delicate vine, all golden curls and porcelain skin, her rose-pink gown cut to display just enough décolletage to be daring without crossing into scandal. She smiled up at Adrian with practiced adoration, her blue eyes wide and innocent. The daughter of an earl, beautiful, accomplished, perfectly bred for this role, the future Duchess of Blackthorne. Everyone said they were the perfect match. Elena had thought so too, until an hour ago. She had been in the library, escaping the suffocating heat of the ballroom, seeking a moment of peace among the books, when she heard voices in the adjacent music room. The door had been left slightly ajar, and Elena had frozen in the shadows, her instinct for self-preservation warning her not to announce her presence. "Darling, you're worrying over nothing." Vivian's voice, honey-sweet and utterly different from the public performance. Sharper, colder. "I'm not worried, I'm cautious. There's a difference." A male voice Elena didn't recognize, young, aristocratic, petulant. Adrian suspects nothing. He's too busy playing the dutiful duke to notice what's right under his nose. A low laugh. "How long do you intend to keep up this charade?" "Until the wedding, naturally. Once I'm the Duchess, I'll have everything I need. The title, the money, the position. Then we can be more careful, but not reckless." I'm tired of being your secret, Vivian. And I'm tired of explaining basic strategy to you, Thomas. Do you want me or not? A pause. Then sounds that made Elena's face burn. Intimate sounds, the rustle of silk, breathless whispers. Elena had fled the library like a thief, her heart hammering, her mind reeling. She'd retreated to her corner in the ballroom, trying to make sense of what she'd heard. Thomas. It had to be Thomas Carrington, Vivian's childhood friend, a Viscount's third son, handsome and charming and perpetually in debt. Elena had seen them together at parties before, always laughing, always finding excuses to slip away for private conversations. She'd thought nothing of it then. Now watching Vivian gaze up at Adrian with perfect devotion, Elena felt sick. You look troubled, cousin. Elena startled, turning to find Sebastian Thornfield at her elbow. Her aunt's son, a pleasant young man of 25 with sandy hair and an easy smile. Unlike his mother, Sebastian had always been kind to Elena, treating her more like a sister than an obligation. Just tired, Elena said quietly. Sebastian glanced at the golden couple holding court across the room. Quite the spectacle, isn't it? The great Duke finally chooses a bride. Half the mothers in London are in mourning. He paused, studying Elena's face. You really do look pale. Are you unwell? I'm fine, Elena lied. It's very warm in here. Then let's get you some air. Sebastian offered his arm. A turn on the terrace? I promise to bore you with my opinions on crop rotation until you feel better. Elena managed a smile, grateful for his steadiness. They wove through the crowd toward the French doors that opened onto the torch-lit terrace. As they passed near Adrian and Vivian, Elena couldn't help but look. The Duke was listening politely to something Lord Ashcroft was saying, his expression neutral, controlled. But there was something in his eyes, a weariness, perhaps, or a loneliness that all his power and position couldn't quite mask. Elena had noticed it before, in unguarded moments. Adrian Blackthorne might be the most powerful duke in England, but he carried that power like a weight, not a crown. And Vivian was about to add to that burden in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Elena and Sebastian stepped onto the terrace. The cool November air was a mercy after the ballroom's heat. Other guests clustered in small groups, their conversation a low murmur beneath the music floating from inside. Sebastian guided Elena to a quiet corner near the stone balustrade, away from prying ears. All right, he said gently. What's really wrong? Elena hesitated. Sebastian was kind, but he was also a man who believed in the fundamental goodness of people. How could she explain what she'd overheard without sounding like a jealous gossip? She had no proof, just a conversation heard through a cracked door. In this world, reputation was everything, and accusations without evidence were social poison. It's nothing, she said finally. Just tired of all this. She gestured vaguely at the party, the glittering facade. Sebastian's expression softened with understanding. I know Mother can be difficult, but you have a place here, Elena. Your family. Am I? The words slipped out before she could stop them. I'm the poor relation, Sebastian. The charity case everyone tolerates, but no one truly wants. I want you here, Sebastian said firmly. You're the only person in this entire house who tells me the truth. He grinned. Admittedly, you're usually telling me I'm an idiot, but at least you're honest about it. Elena couldn't help but smile at that. You're not an idiot, just occasionally misguided. See? Honest. Sebastian's grin faded, his expression growing serious. But truly, Elena, if something is troubling you, you can tell me. You know that, don't you? She wanted to. Heaven help her, she wanted to tell someone, to share the terrible knowledge burning in her chest. But what could Sebastian do? What could anyone do? If she spoke and was wrong, she'd be cast out in disgrace. If she spoke and was right, she'd make enemies powerful enough to destroy her. The smart thing, the safe thing, was to stay silent. I know, Elena said softly. Thank you, Sebastian. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the torch flames dance in the darkness. Then Sebastian glanced toward the ballroom doors and sighed. I should return before Mother sends out a search party. She's determined to introduce me to every eligible lady in 3 counties tonight. he grimaced. I'm beginning to understand why Adrian looked so hunted before he announced his engagement. Run while you can, Elena advised. Sebastian laughed and squeezed her hand. Don't stay out here too long. It's getting cold. He disappeared back into the ballroom, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the distant sound of violins. She should go inside. She should return to her corner, play the invisible woman, and forget what she'd heard. In a world like this, the wise survived by keeping their heads down and their mouths shut. But Elena had never been particularly wise. She gripped the cold stone of the balustrade and stared out at the manicured gardens, her mind churning. She thought of Adrian Blackthorne's guarded eyes, the weariness in his expression. She thought of Vivian's performance, the calculated sweetness hiding cold ambition. She thought of the years ahead, a marriage built on lies, a man trapped in a gilded cage by a woman who saw him only as a title to be claimed and a fortune to be spent. It was none of her business. Adrian Blackthorne was a powerful duke who could take care of himself. And Elena Ward was nobody, a shadow in the corner, a woman with no power, no influence, no right to interfere in the affairs of her betters, but knowing and doing nothing. Could she live with that? Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the choice before her. Stay silent, stay safe, survive. Or speak, risk everything, and damn the consequences. The music swelled from inside, a waltz beginning. Through the windows, Elena could see couples taking the floor, a swirl of color and movement. Adrian and Vivian among them, moving together with practiced grace, the perfect couple everyone expected them to be. A lie. All of it. A beautiful, terrible lie. Elena's hands tightened on the stone. She had spent 23 years being invisible, staying silent, playing by rules designed to keep people like her in their place. What had it gotten her? A life on the margins, watching the world turn, never quite belonging, never quite enough. Maybe it was time to stop playing it safe. The decision crystallized in her chest like ice forming on water, sharp, cold, utterly clear. She would tell Adrian Blackthorne the truth, not for him, not really, though he deserved better than Vivian's deceit, but for herself. Because staying silent now would kill something essential in her soul, the small core of her that still believed truth mattered, that justice was worth fighting for even when the fight seemed hopeless. She was probably going to regret this for the rest of her life, but at least she would regret doing something instead of nothing. The next morning, Elena sat in the small writing room off her bedroom, staring at the blank page before her. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the fine paper, the silver inkwell, the quill waiting to be lifted. Simple materials. Impossible task. Your Grace, she had written at the top, then stopped, paralyzed by the enormity of what she was about to do. How did one tell a duke his fiancée was unfaithful? What words could possibly convey the weight of such an accusation without sounding like melodrama or petty jealousy? Elena had spent half the night composing and discarding drafts in her mind, each version worse than the last. I regret to inform you that Lady Vivian is not what she appears. Too vague. During last evening's gathering, I overheard a conversation between Lady Vivian and Mr. Thomas Carrington that suggests too accusatory. This letter may seem presumptuous, but I feel compelled by conscience. Too weak. Elena set down the quill and pressed her palms against her eyes. This was madness. She should burn the half-written letter and forget this foolish notion. What made her think Adrian Blackthorne would even read a letter from her, let alone believe it? She was nobody. He would think her jealous, or mad, or angling for attention. But if she didn't try... A sharp knock on the door made Elena jump. Yes? Miss Elena? The voice belonged to Margaret, one of the younger maids. Lady Thornfield requests your presence in the morning room. Elena's stomach sank. Her aunt requesting her presence was never good news. Thank you, Margaret. Tell her ladyship I'll be down shortly. She took a moment to compose herself, tucking the unfinished letter into her desk drawer and smoothing her simple morning dress. Then she descended the stairs to face whatever fresh humiliation her aunt had planned. Lady Cecilia Thornfield sat in state in the morning room, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her pale blue morning gown impeccable. She was reading correspondence, her lips pursed in perpetual disapproval. She didn't look up when Elena entered. You wish to see me, Aunt Cecilia? Indeed. Her aunt set down the letter she was reading and fixed Elena with a cool stare. I received an interesting report from Mrs. Weatherby this morning. She mentioned seeing you on the terrace last night, looking, in her words, quite agitated and speaking with Sebastian in a most intense manner. Would you care to explain what was so urgent it required a private audience with my son? Of course. Of course someone had seen them and reported back. In this world, even innocent conversations were currency for gossip. We were simply talking, Aunt, nothing of consequence. Mrs. Weatherby seemed to think otherwise. She suggested you appeared distressed. Elena kept her voice level. The ballroom was very warm. I stepped outside for air. Sebastian was kind enough to check on me. How thoughtful of him. Lady Cecilia's tone dripped with sarcasm. You do understand, I hope, that as a woman in your position, you must be especially careful about appearances. You have no family name to protect you, no fortune to excuse eccentricity. Your reputation is your only asset, and it's already questionable given your unfortunate background. The familiar sting of shame mixed with anger in Elena's chest. Her unfortunate background, the polite way of saying her father had died in debt, and her mother of a broken heart 6 months later, leaving Elena dependent on the charity of relatives who resented every penny spent on her upkeep. I understand, Aunt. Do you? Lady Cecilia stood, moving to the window. Because I'm beginning to wonder. You're 23, Elena. Most girls your age are married, or at least engaged. You've had several respectable offers, Mr. Hartford, Sir Reginald, even that banker's son last summer, all men who would have given you a comfortable life, and you refused them all. Because they were old, or boring, or looked at her like livestock being evaluated for purchase. But Elena couldn't say that. I didn't feel we were well suited, she said instead. Well suited? Her aunt laughed, sharp and bitter. My dear girl, you seem to have romantic notions utterly unsuited to your station. You're not a character in some novel, waiting for true love. You're a woman with no dowry, no prospects, and no options. The next man who offers for you, you will accept. Am I clear? Elena's hands clenched in the folds of her skirt. Perfectly clear, Aunt. Good. Now I want you to make yourself useful. Lady Ashcroft is calling this afternoon with Vivian. They want to discuss wedding plans. You will attend, take notes, and make yourself agreeable. Perhaps if you're fortunate, some of Vivian's grace and charm will rub off on you. The irony was so bitter, Elena almost laughed. Instead, she nodded meekly. Of course, Aunt. That will be all. Lady Cecilia dismissed her with a wave. Elena fled the morning room, her cheeks burning with humiliation and rage. She climbed the stairs blindly, barely seeing where she was going, her aunt's words echoing in her head. No family name, no fortune. Your reputation is your only asset. She reached her room and closed the door, leaning against it. Her hands were shaking. This was her life. This would always be her life. Unless she married some man who saw her as a cheap acquisition, a plain wife to manage his household and bear his children while he pursued his own interests. She would live on the margins forever, invisible and unimportant, utterly powerless, unless she took power, unless she did something that mattered, that changed things, that proved she was more than just a charity case to be tolerated. Elena crossed to her desk and pulled it. Mm. She sat down, picked up the quill, and began to write. Not carefully this time, not worrying about perfect words or proper phrasing. Just truth, raw and urgent. Your Grace, this letter may cost me everything, but my conscience will not permit silence. Last night, during the gathering at Thornfield, I overheard a conversation between Lady Vivian Ashcroft and Mr. Thomas Carrington that revealed a relationship inconsistent with her engagement to you. The details were intimate and unmistakable. They plan to continue their affair after your marriage. I have no proof beyond my own ears. I gain nothing from this revelation save likely ruin if it becomes known I wrote it. But you deserve to know the truth before you bind your life to a lie. If you choose to investigate, I suggest discretion. Confront them separately when they feel safe. Liars reveal themselves when they think no one is watching. I do not expect you to believe me. I would not believe me in your position. But I have written anyway, because some things are more important than safety. E.W. Elena didn't sign her full name. If the letter fell into the wrong hands, at least there would be some small protection. She folded it carefully, sealed it with plain wax, no monogram to trace, and stared at the finished product. This was it. The point of no return. She could still burn it, pretend she'd never overheard anything, never written this letter, never entertained this dangerous impulse. Instead, Elena rang for Margaret and handed her the letter along with a coin. Please deliver this to Blackthorn House. Give it directly to the Duke's secretary and no one else. Can you do that? Margaret's eyes widened at the coin, more than Elena could really afford to spare. Yes, miss. Right away, miss. Thank you, Margaret. And please, don't mention this to anyone. Of course not, miss. The girl bobbed a curtsy and disappeared. Elena sat alone in her room, staring at her empty hands. It was done. The letter was sent, the die cast. Now there was nothing to do but wait and prepare for the storm. 3 days passed in agonizing suspense. Elena attended the wedding planning session with Lady Ashcroft and Vivian, taking dutiful notes while Vivian gushed about dress fabrics and flower arrangements, her performance of bridal excitement flawless. Elena smiled and nodded and said nothing, all while wondering if Adrian had received her letter, if he'd read it, if he believed a word. No response came, no acknowledgement, nothing. By the 4th day, Elena had convinced herself the letter had been discarded by some efficient secretary as the ravings of a lunatic. It was probably for the best. She'd made her gesture toward truth and justice. Now she could return to invisibility with a clear conscience. Then, on the evening of the 4th day, Sebastian found her in the garden. Elena! He was running, actually running, his face flushed with excitement or alarm. She couldn't tell which. You need to come inside, now. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's... He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the house. Just come, quickly. Inside, the entrance hall was in chaos. Servants rushed about, Lady Cecilia barking orders, the housekeeper looking harried. Through the open door to the drawing room, Elena caught a glimpse of dark evening clothes, broad shoulders. Her heart stopped. Duke Blackthorn has called, Sebastian whispered urgently. Unannounced, he asked to speak with you specifically. The world tilted. What? Mother nearly fainted. He's in the drawing room right now, waiting. She wanted to refuse, but you can't refuse a duke. Sebastian studied her face. Elena, what have you done? She couldn't answer, couldn't think. Adrian Blackthorn was here. He'd received her letter, and now everything was about to change. Sebastian squeezed her hand. Whatever it is, I'm on your side. Remember that. Elena nodded numbly and let him escort her to the drawing room. Lady Cecilia stood near the fireplace, her expression a mixture of confusion and fury. And there, near the window, stood Adrian Blackthorn. He was taller than she remembered, his presence filling the room despite his stillness. He wore a dark coat and gray waistcoat, his cravat simply tied, no ostentation. But he didn't need ornament. Power radiated from him like heat from a fire. His gray-green eyes fixed on Elena the moment she entered, and she felt pinned by that gaze, examined, assessed. She forced herself to hold his stare, chin up, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Miss Ward, Adrian said, his voice deep and controlled. Thank you for seeing me. Lady Cecilia made a strangled sound. Your Grace, I must apologize for my niece's... Lady Thornfield. Adrian didn't raise his voice, but the interruption silenced her instantly. I appreciate your hospitality, but I need to speak with Miss Ward privately. That is highly irregular, Your Grace. Surely a chaperone. I assure you my intentions are entirely honorable. His tone left no room for argument. 5 minutes. The door may remain open if it eases your concern. Lady Cecilia looked like she'd swallowed something sour, but she nodded stiffly. Sebastian, come with me. She swept from the room, dragging her son with her, though not before Sebastian shot Elena one more worried glance. Then they were alone, Elena and one of the most powerful men in England, with only the open door and the distant sounds of the household between them and complete privacy. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Elena met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away, even as every instinct screamed at her to run. You wrote me a letter, he said finally. Yes. An extraordinary letter, anonymous, unsigned save for initials, containing accusations that, if true, would destroy a woman's reputation and upend a carefully planned alliance. Elena's throat was dry. Yes? Why? The simple question held layers of complexity. Why write? Why anonymous? Why her? Elena took a breath, choosing her words carefully. Because it was true. And because you deserved to know before you made an irrevocable choice. You could have been mistaken, overheard something innocent and misinterpreted it. I know what I heard, Your Grace. His eyes narrowed slightly. You risked a great deal sending that letter. If Lady Vivian discovered you were the source, she could destroy you socially. If I had chosen to show it to her family as proof of malicious gossip, you would be ruined. Why take that risk for a man you don't even know? Because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't, Elena thought. Because some part of me is still naive enough to believe truth matters. Because I'm tired of being invisible. But she couldn't say any of that. Instead, she said simply, it was the right thing to do. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. He moved closer, and Elena fought the urge to step back. He was taller than her by nearly a foot, and up close, she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the faint shadow along his jaw. This wasn't the distant Duke from across a ballroom. This was a man, flesh and blood, complicated and real. I investigated your claims, he said quietly. Discreetly. 3 nights ago, I returned unexpectedly from a supposed business trip. I found Lady Vivian and Mr. Carrington in the conservatory of her family's home. The scene was unambiguous. Elena's breath caught. So it was true. All of it. I confronted them both. Vivian tried to deny it at first, then claim you had forced yourself on her, Thomas. Carrington. Adrian's voice was cold now, controlled fury beneath the surface. He confirmed everything. The affair had been ongoing for months. The engagement to me was, as your letter suggested, purely strategic. I'm sorry, Elena said, and meant it. Not sorry she'd told him, but sorry it was true. Sorry he'd been hurt. Sorry the world was a place where people used each other so callously. Don't be. Adrian's eyes locked on hers. You saved me from a marriage that would have been a living hell. I broke the engagement that night. It's over. Relief flooded through her. I'm glad you learned the truth. I didn't come here to thank you, Adrian said, though his tone wasn't unkind. I came because you need to understand what's about to happen. When the news becomes public, and it will within days, there will be speculation. Questions about how I discovered the affair. Vivian's family will want a scapegoat, someone to blame for the scandal. The relief drained away, replaced by cold dread. They'll blame me. Yes. Adrian held her gaze steadily. Vivian already suspects you were involved, though she has no proof. She will make your life very difficult, Miss Ward. Her family is powerful, influential. They will spread rumors, question your character, make it impossible for you to show your face in society. Elena's hands clenched in her skirts. She'd known this was possible, but hearing it stated so bluntly made it real. What would you have me do? Lie? Pretend I know nothing? No. The word was sharp, decisive. I came to warn you and to offer you a choice. If you leave London now, before the scandal breaks, I can arrange for you to live quietly in the country. I have properties where you would be safe, comfortable. You could start over, away from all this. It was a generous offer, more than generous, a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman, and it felt like defeat. "You're asking me to run," Elena said quietly. "I'm asking you to protect yourself. By hiding, by letting them win." She shook her head. "I didn't write that letter so I could run away, Your Grace. I wrote it because it was the truth, and truth matters. If I flee now, it confirms every ugly thing they'll say about me. That I was a jealous, scheming liar trying to ruin an innocent woman. They'll say that anyway. Then let them say it to my face." Elena lifted her chin, feeling something fierce and reckless ignite in her chest. "I won't run. I won't hide. I did the right thing, and I'll face the consequences." Adrian stared at her, and for the first time she saw something like respect in his eyes. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Elena admitted. "But I've spent my entire life being invisible, Your Grace. Safe and small and utterly powerless. I'm done with that. Whatever comes next, I'll face it standing upright." A long silence stretched between them. Then Adrian did something unexpected. He smiled. It was brief, barely there, but it transformed his face, softening the severe lines into something almost warm. "Very well, Miss Ward. If you insist on staying, then you should know you won't face this alone." He reached into his coat and withdrew a card, offering it to her. "If the situation becomes untenable, send word to this address. I owe you a debt. I don't forget my debts." Elena took the card, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. "You owe me nothing, Your Grace. I didn't do this for a reward." "I know. That's precisely why I'm offering help." Adrian inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect between equals, not aristocrat to dependent. "I suspect we'll be seeing each other again soon, Miss Ward. The storm is coming. Try not to let it drown you." Then he was gone, striding from the drawing room with the same controlled power he'd brought in. Elena heard him exchanging brief pleasantries with Lady Cecilia in the hall, then the sound of the front door closing, of carriage wheels on gravel. She stood alone in the drawing room holding the Duke's card, her heart racing. The storm was coming, and Elena Ward, invisible, powerless, nobody, had just chosen to stand directly in its path. The storm broke exactly 3 days after Adrian Blackthorne walked out of the Thornfield drawing room. Elena was in the morning room with Sebastian, ostensibly reviewing household accounts, but mostly staring at numbers that refused to make sense, when Lady Cecilia burst through the door. Her aunt's face was white with rage, a newspaper clutched in her trembling hands. "You," Lady Cecilia said, her voice shaking. "You did this." Elena's stomach dropped. "Aunt Cecilia, don't." Her aunt slammed the newspaper onto the table. "Don't you dare speak. Do you have any idea what you've done? Any comprehension of the disaster you've brought down on this family?" Sebastian reached for the paper, his face paling as he scanned the front page. "Mother, perhaps we should—" "Read it," Lady Cecilia commanded, her eyes fixed on Elena with something close to hatred. "Read what your precious cousin has accomplished." Sebastian's voice was quiet as he read aloud. "Scandal rocks Blackthorne engagement. Duke ends betrothal after discovering fiancé's affair. Sources close to Lady Vivian Ashcroft claim the broken engagement is the result of malicious interference by an unnamed noblewoman who fabricated evidence of infidelity out of jealousy and spite. The Ashcroft family vehemently denies any wrongdoing and has suggested legal action against those who spread false accusations intended to destroy Lady Vivian's reputation and marriage prospects." The words hung in the air like poison. "They're lying," Elena said, finding her voice. "Vivian was having an affair with Thomas Carrington. The Duke discovered them together. I didn't fabricate anything." Lady Cecilia's laugh was sharp and bitter. "And you think anyone will believe you? You're nobody, Elena, a charity case with no name, no fortune, no standing. Vivian Ashcroft is the daughter of an earl, beloved in society, connected to half the powerful families in England. Who do you think they'll believe?" The truth is irrelevant." Her aunt's voice rose to a near shriek. "Perception is everything in our world, and the perception is that you, jealous, desperate, pathetic, sabotaged an engagement out of some deranged attempt to secure the Duke's attention for yourself. That's absurd, Sebastian protested. Elena would never. Wouldn't she? Lady Cecilia whirled on her son. Think, Sebastian, why else would the Duke have called here? Why would he speak privately with her? What possible reason could there be except that she inserted herself into his affairs, whispered poisonous lies about his fiancée, and hoped to profit from the chaos? Elena felt the walls closing in. Her aunt was twisting everything, reshaping the narrative into something ugly and unrecognizable. I told him the truth because it was the right thing to do, because he deserved to know before he married a woman who was deceiving him. Noble sentiments from a woman who's destroyed herself. Lady Cecilia's voice turned cold. You're finished, Elena. Completely finished. By this evening, every drawing room in London will know your name and not in any way you'd desire. You'll be painted as a schemer, a liar, a woman so desperate for attention she'd ruin an innocent girl's future. Vivian isn't innocent, Elena said, her own anger rising now. She was planning to continue the affair after the wedding. She saw Adrian as nothing but a title and fortune to exploit. Prove it. The two words stopped Elena cold. Show me proof, Lady Cecilia continued remorselessly. Written correspondence, witnesses willing to testify. Anything concrete that would stand up in a court of law or the court of public opinion. Can you? Elena's silence was answer enough. I thought not. You overheard a conversation and jumped to conclusions. Then, in your infinite wisdom, you decided to interfere in matters far above your station, and now we all must pay the price. Lady Cecilia moved to the window, her back rigid with fury. I've received 3 cancellations this morning. The Pembrokes, the Ashfords, and Lady Westmore have all sent regrets for our dinner party next week. By tomorrow, there will be more. By week's end, no one of consequence will cross our threshold. Sebastian set down the paper carefully. Mother, surely if we explain... Explain what? That we're harboring the woman who destroyed the engagement of the year? That we've allowed her to remain under our roof despite her schemes? Lady Cecilia turned back to face them. No, there's only one way to salvage this situation, and that's to distance ourselves from Elena immediately and completely. The finality in her voice sent ice through Elena's veins. What are you saying? I'm saying you're no longer welcome in this house. You have until nightfall to pack your belongings and leave. Mother! Sebastian stood abruptly. You can't be serious. Elena has nowhere to go. Then she should have thought of that before she appointed herself moral arbiter to a duke. Lady Cecilia's expression was granite. I took you in out of charity, Elena, when you had nothing and no one. I gave you a home, introduced you to society, provided everything you needed. And this is how you repay me, by bringing scandal and ruin to my doorstep. I didn't bring scandal, Elena said, her voice trembling despite her efforts to control it. Vivian did. She was the one who... Enough! Her aunt's hand slammed on the table. I don't care what Vivian did or didn't do. I care about my family, my reputation, my standing. And all of those are now at risk because of your meddling. You will leave today, and you will not contact anyone in this household again. Is that understood? Elena looked at Sebastian, desperate for an ally, but even he seemed shocked into silence by their mother's pronouncement. Is that understood? Lady Cecilia repeated, her voice like iron. Yes, Elena whispered. Understood. Good. Now get out of my sight. Elena fled the morning room on shaking legs, climbed the stairs to her small bedroom, and closed the door before the tears came. She pressed her hands over her mouth to muffle the sobs, not wanting to give her aunt the satisfaction of hearing her break. She'd known there would be consequences. She'd prepared herself for social ostracism, for rumors and accusations, but she hadn't truly understood what it would mean to lose her home, the only shelter she had in the world. Where would she go? She had no money saved. Her aunt had never provided her with an allowance beyond pin money for small necessities. She had no friends close enough to impose upon, no other relatives who would take her in. The Duke's card. Elena pulled it from the drawer where she'd hidden it, reading the elegant script. Blackthorn House, Grosvenor Square. Adrian had offered help, but the idea of going to him now, in the midst of this scandal, seemed impossible. It would only confirm every ugly rumor, that she'd orchestrated everything to get close to him, that she was a scheming opportunist trading on a duke's gratitude. But what choice did she have? A soft knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Elena, it's Sebastian." She wiped her eyes quickly and opened the door. Sebastian slipped inside, his expression anguished. "I'm so sorry," he said immediately. "I tried to reason with her, but she won't listen. She's terrified of losing our social standing." "I understand," Elena said, though it hurt to admit it. "She's protecting her family. I'm just collateral damage." "Your family, too." Sebastian gripped her hands. "Elena, listen to me. I have some money set aside, not much, but enough for lodging and expenses for a few weeks. Let me help you." "I can't take your money." "You can, and you will." He pressed a small purse into her hands. "Please. I can't stop Mother from throwing you out, but I can at least make sure you're not destitute." Elena felt fresh tears threaten. "Sebastian, there's more." He lowered his voice. "I've been making inquiries, quietly. Thomas Carrington has gambling debts all over London. Vivian's family has been paying them off for months, ever since the engagement was announced. I think they knew about the affair all along and were using Adrian's money to solve their problems." "Can you prove it?" "Not yet. But if I can find the right creditor, someone willing to talk." Sebastian squeezed her hands. "The point is, you were right. About all of it, and I'm going to find a way to prove it." Hope flickered, fragile and desperate. "How long will that take?" "I don't know. Weeks, maybe months. But Elena, you need to survive until then. Find somewhere safe to stay, keep your head down, and let me work on this." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Sebastian pulled her into a fierce hug. "You're the bravest person I know," he whispered. "Don't let them break you." Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with a small purse of coins and a decision she could no longer avoid. She would have to go to Adrian Blackthorne and beg for help. The humiliation of it burned, but pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Elena packed her few belongings into a single trunk, her clothes, her mother's locket, a few books she couldn't bear to leave behind. Everything she owned in the world fit into one battered piece of luggage. She changed into her most respectable traveling dress, a dark blue wool that was warm if not fashionable, and arranged for one of the footmen to hire a hack to take her to Grosvenor Square. The ride through London felt surreal. The city moved around her with its usual chaotic energy, street vendors calling their wares, carriages rattling over cobblestones, children playing in the squares. The world continued turning, indifferent to Elena Ward's personal catastrophe. When the hack pulled up in front of Blackthorne House, Elena almost lost her nerve. The mansion was massive, 4 stories of pale stone with black iron railings and windows that gleamed in the afternoon sun. A footman in immaculate livery stood at the door, his expression professionally neutral as Elena climbed down from the hack. "I need to speak with Duke Blackthorne," Elena said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "My name is Elena Ward. He told me to come here if I needed assistance." The footman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. He'd probably read the scandal sheets too. "Please wait here, miss." He disappeared inside, leaving Elena standing on the steps with her trunk at her feet, feeling every inch the desperate supplicant. Minutes passed. Elena became aware of curtains twitching in nearby windows, curious eyes watching. By tomorrow, this visit would be in every gossip column in London. The door opened again. The footman reappeared, but this time he was followed by a stern-looking woman in black. The housekeeper, Elena assumed. "Miss Ward," the woman said crisply. "I'm Mrs. Henshaw, housekeeper of Blackthorne House. His Grace is not currently in residence, but he left explicit instructions regarding your possible arrival. Please come inside." Relief and apprehension warred in Elena's chest as she followed Mrs. Henshaw into the entrance hall. The interior was as impressive as the exterior. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, a grand staircase sweeping upward. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their painted eyes seeming to judge Elena as she passed. "His Grace anticipated you might need accommodation," Mrs. Henshaw continued, leading Elena up the stairs. "He's arranged rooms in the East Wing. They're quite comfortable, I assure you, and private. Few people use that part of the house. Where's the Duke? Elena asked. He departed for his country estate 2 days ago. Business matters. Mrs. Henshaw glanced back at her. He left word that you were to be made comfortable and that no one was to disturb you or question your presence here. The staff has been instructed to maintain absolute discretion. They reached the second floor and turned down a long corridor. Mrs. Henshaw opened a door, revealing a suite that took Elena's breath away. The sitting room was done in soft greens and golds, with a writing desk by the window, comfortable chairs near the fireplace, and shelves lined with books. Through an open doorway, Elena glimpsed a bedroom with a 4-poster bed that looked like something from a fairy tale. "This is too much," Elena said faintly. His Grace was quite clear about his wishes. Mrs. Henshaw set Elena's trunk inside the door. "There's a bell pull by the fireplace if you need anything. Meals will be brought to your rooms unless you prefer to dine in the breakfast room. I'd advise the former, given the circumstances." The circumstances being that a scandalous woman was hiding in the Duke's house, while all of London gossiped about them both. "Thank you, Mrs. Henshaw." The housekeeper's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly. "For what it's worth, miss, the staff here knows His Grace's character. Whatever the scandal sheets are saying, we know he wouldn't shelter someone undeserving. You're safe here." When Mrs. Henshaw left, Elena sank into one of the chairs and let herself fully comprehend her situation. She was living in the Duke of Blackthorn's house, alone, unchaperoned, dependent on his charity and protection. If this became public knowledge, her reputation wouldn't just be damaged, it would be obliterated. But the alternative was the street, and Elena had chosen survival over propriety. She just hoped it wouldn't destroy them both. The next 3 days passed in surreal isolation. Elena kept to her rooms, reading or staring out the window at the manicured gardens below. Servants came and went silently, bringing meals and fresh linens, their expressions carefully blank. Mrs. Henshaw checked on her twice daily, always proper, always discreet. No word came from Adrian. No explanation for his absence or indication of when he might return. Elena tried not to feel abandoned. He'd provided shelter when she needed it most, more than he owed her. But the uncertainty gnawed at her. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Elena was picking at breakfast when she heard raised voices from somewhere in the house. A woman's voice, sharp and imperious, demanding entrance. Mrs. Henshaw's calmer tones trying to refuse. Then footsteps on the stairs, quick and determined. Elena barely had time to stand before her door flew open. Vivian Ashcroft swept into the room like an avenging angel, her golden hair perfectly coiffed, her rose silk gown immaculate, but her beautiful face was twisted with rage. "You!" Vivian hissed. "You're the one who destroyed everything." Mrs. Henshaw appeared in the doorway, flustered. "I'm terribly sorry, miss." She pushed past. "Leave us," Vivian commanded without looking at the housekeeper. "I most certainly will not," Mrs. Henshaw said firmly. "This is highly inappropriate, Lady Vivian. I must ask you to leave immediately." "I'll leave when I'm finished." Vivian's eyes never left Elena's face. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Any comprehension of the lives you've ruined?" Elena forced herself to stand straight, to meet Vivian's furious gaze. "I told the truth. That's all." "The truth?" Vivian laughed bitterly. "You told lies to a man who was predisposed to believe the worst of me. You poisoned his mind against me out of jealousy and spite." "I overheard you," Elena said quietly. "In the music room at Thornfield. You and Thomas Carrington, planning to continue your affair after the wedding. I didn't lie. I didn't exaggerate. I simply told the Duke what I heard." Something flickered across Vivian's face, surprise perhaps that Elena would admit it so directly. "You had no right. What I do, who I see, is none of your concern. It became my concern when you planned to trap a good man in a fraudulent marriage." "Trap?" Vivian's voice rose. "I was going to be a duchess. I was going to have everything I deserved after years of playing the perfect daughter, the perfect lady, suffocating under society's expectations. And you took that from me. You, a nobody, an orphan charity case with delusions of heroism." "I took nothing," Elena said, her own anger rising now. "You destroyed your own future when you chose deception over honesty. If you'd truly loved Adrian. Love? Vivian spat the word like a curse. Love is a fairy tale for children and fools. Marriage is business, strategy, survival. I would have made Adrian an excellent duchess. I would have managed his household, hosted his political dinners, provided him with heirs. What he didn't know wouldn't have hurt him. That's where you're wrong, Elena said softly. It would have hurt him every day of his life, even if he never knew why. You would have taken his trust, his hope for genuine partnership, and turned it into a lie. That kind of betrayal leaves scars. Vivian stared at her, something like genuine curiosity in her expression. You actually believe that, don't you? You think you saved him? She shook her head slowly. You naive little fool. You haven't saved anyone. You've condemned yourself to ruin, and for what? A duke who will never see you as anything but a convenient informant? The words hit harder than Elena wanted to admit, striking at her deepest fears. And now, Vivian continued, her smile sharp as a blade, you're living in his house, unchaperoned, dependent on his protection. Do you know what people are saying? That you're his mistress. That this entire scandal was orchestrated so Adrian could end an inconvenient engagement and install his real lover. That's not true. Truth doesn't matter, only perception. And the perception is that Elena Ward is a scheming opportunist who used false accusations to steal a duke. Vivian moved closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. I'm going to destroy you, completely. By the time I'm finished, your name will be synonymous with deceit and manipulation. No one will believe a word you say. No one will help you. You'll be utterly alone. I'm already alone, Elena said. I've been alone my entire life. You can't take from me what I never had. We'll see. Vivian turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Elena? Adrian didn't go to the country on business. He fled London because being associated with this scandal, with you, was damaging his own reputation. He's abandoned you to face the consequences alone. Remember that when you're congratulating yourself on your noble truth-telling. Then she was gone, her footsteps echoing down the hall, leaving Elena standing in the wreckage of her certainty. Mrs. Henshaw appeared in the doorway, her expression genuinely distressed. Miss Ward, I'm so sorry. I should never have let her past. It's all right, Elena said, though her voice shook. She would have found a way eventually. But it wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. Vivian's words echoed in her head, each one a poisoned dart finding its mark. Adrian didn't go to the country on business. He fled London because being associated with you was damaging his reputation. He's abandoned you. Was it true? Had the Duke who'd offered protection decided she was more trouble than gratitude warranted? Was she truly alone now, facing Vivian's promised destruction with no allies, no resources, no hope? Elena moved to the window, staring out at gardens she had no right to walk in. Living in luxury she had no right to enjoy, waiting for a man who might never return. She'd chosen truth over safety, justice over survival, and the cost was becoming clear. That night, unable to sleep, Elena found herself in the library. Mrs. Henshaw had given her permission to use any of the house's common rooms during late hours when the staff was abed and no visitors would call. The library was vast. 2 stories of books reaching toward a painted ceiling with rolling ladders and comfortable reading chairs scattered throughout. Elena was examining a shelf of poetry when she heard the front door open. Her heart stuttered. She knew she should retreat to her rooms, but curiosity, or perhaps hope, kept her frozen in place. Voices in the entrance hall, Mrs. Henshaw, surprised and welcoming, and then a deeper voice, familiar and commanding. Adrian was home. Elena's first instinct was to flee. Her second was to stay and demand answers. Had he truly fled London to avoid association with her? But before she could decide, the library door opened and Adrian Blackthorne stood in the doorway. He looked tired. That was Elena's first thought. The severe lines of his face seemed deeper, shadows under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. He still wore his traveling coat, dust on his boots, his cravat loosened. He'd come straight to the library without even changing. "Miss Ward," he said, "I hoped I'd find you here." "Your Grace." Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I didn't expect you back so soon. I received word that Lady Vivian paid you a visit. An unpleasant one, I gather." Adrian moved into the room, closing the door behind him. Are you all right? The simple question, asked with genuine concern, nearly undid her composure. I'm unharmed. Shaken, but unharmed. What did she say to you? Elena hesitated, then decided there was no point in lying. That she intends to destroy my reputation completely. That people believe I'm your mistress, and that we orchestrated this entire scandal together. That you fled London because I'd become a liability to your own standing. Adrian's expression darkened. She said that last part? Yes. It's a lie. He crossed to the fireplace, staring into the flames. I went to the country because I needed to think, to understand how I could have been so blind to Vivian's true nature. I built my entire life on reading people, assessing character, making calculated decisions, and I failed spectacularly. You trusted someone you thought you knew, Elena said quietly. That's not failure. That's being human. Adrian turned to look at her, something unreadable in his expression. Is that why you warned me? Because you thought I deserved better than being deceived? Yes. Even though warning me would cost you everything? Yes. Why? The question was raw, genuine. You didn't know me. We'd never even spoken before that day at Thornfield. Why would you sacrifice your safety, your home, your entire future for a stranger? Elena struggled to find words for something she barely understood herself. Because some things are more important than safety. Because I've spent my whole life watching powerful people use and discard others without consequence, and I'm tired of it. Because... She stopped, then forced herself to continue. Because you looked so alone, standing in that ballroom with Vivian on your arm, and I couldn't bear to see you trapped in a lie. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling fire. Adrian studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she held his gaze. You're an extraordinary woman, Elena Ward, he said finally. Dangerously honest, recklessly brave, and completely unsuited for the world you were born into. I know, Elena said. Believe me, I'm aware of my unsuitability. That wasn't criticism. Adrian moved closer, and Elena was suddenly, acutely aware that they were alone in this room, at night, unchaperoned. It was admiration. You did what most people would never have the courage to do. You chose principle over preservation. That's rare, precious even. It's also left me homeless and ruined, Elena said, trying for lightness to ease the tension thrumming in the air between them. Not ruined, not if I have any say in the matter. Adrian's voice took on a harder edge. Vivian isn't the only one who can play the game of reputation. She's declared war, and she's about to discover I'm a more formidable opponent than she anticipated. What are you going to do? Fight back? Adrian's smile was sharp and not particularly pleasant. Starting with a very public appearance at Lord Pemberton's ball tomorrow night, I'll be in attendance. So will you. Together. Elena's breath caught. That's social suicide, for both of us. Or it's a declaration that we have nothing to hide and nothing to be ashamed of. Let them see you're under my protection. Let them understand that anyone who moves against you moves against me. That will only confirm the rumors that I'm your mistress. Then we'll give them a different narrative to consider. Adrian held her gaze steadily. One where a woman of conscience did the right thing at great personal cost, and a grateful duke ensured she wasn't destroyed for her honesty. It's not as salacious as an affair, but it has the advantage of being true. Society doesn't care about truth, Elena said bitterly. Then we'll make them care. Adrian extended his hand to her, palm up, an invitation. One more gamble, Miss Ward. One more risk. Stand with me tomorrow night, and I promise you, you won't face this storm alone. Elena stared at his outstretched hand. This was madness. Appearing publicly with Adrian would paint an even larger target on her back, confirm every ugly rumor, possibly drag them both down. The smart thing was to refuse, to stay hidden, to wait for this scandal to blow over. But Elena Ward had never been particularly smart about self-preservation. She reached out and placed her hand in his. Adrian's fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and utterly certain. Together then, Elena said. Together, Adrian agreed. And somewhere in London, in drawing rooms and scandal sheets, in the whispered conversations of people who thrived on others' destruction, Vivian Ashcroft's promised war was about to escalate into something far more dangerous than either woman had anticipated, because Elena Ward had chosen to stop hiding, and Adrian Blackthorne had chosen to stand beside her. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. The ballroom at Pemberton House blazed with 1,000 candles, their light glittering off crystal chandeliers and the jewels adorning London's finest. The cream of society had gathered for what was traditionally the season's most prestigious event, but tonight the usual pleasantries and political maneuvering had taken a back seat to one topic: the scandal involving Duke Blackthorne and the mysterious woman who had destroyed his engagement. Elena stood in the antechamber just outside the ballroom, her reflection staring back at her from an ornate mirror. The gown Adrian had sent that afternoon was unlike anything she'd ever worn, deep midnight blue silk that seemed to capture starlight, cut to emphasize her figure without being scandalous, with delicate silver embroidery along the bodice. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant arrangement, a single strand of pearls, also from Adrian, at her throat. She looked like she belonged in this world. The illusion would shatter the moment she walked through those doors. Second thoughts? Adrian appeared beside her, resplendent in black evening clothes that emphasized his commanding presence. His gray-green eyes met hers in the mirror. Seventh or eighth, actually, Elena admitted. I keep counting, but I lose track somewhere around the part where I imagine Vivian throwing wine in my face. She won't, Adrian's voice was certain. She's too calculating for public violence. Her weapons are whispers and social exclusion, not spectacle. That's almost worse. I know. He offered his arm. But we don't give her the satisfaction of our fear. We walk in together, heads high, as though we have every right to be here. Because we do. Elena placed her hand on his arm, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the fine fabric. You know this could destroy you too. Your reputation, your political influence. I'm a duke with an ancient title and more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I'm insulated in ways you aren't. Adrian's jaw tightened. But more importantly, I refuse to abandon someone who showed me the truth, no matter how unpleasant that truth was. If society can't understand honor, that's society's failing, not ours. You make it sound almost noble. It is noble. You did something noble, Elena, and you're being punished for it. That ends tonight. Before Elena could respond, the doors to the ballroom opened, and the majordomo's voice rang out. His Grace, the Duke of Blackthorne, and Miss Elena Ward. The announcement fell like a thunderclap. Conversation died mid-sentence, heads turned in perfect unison. Elena felt hundreds of eyes fix on her, assessing, judging, dissecting. The weight of their collective attention was suffocating, but Adrian's arm remained steady beneath her hand, and she forced herself to walk forward into that sea of hostile stares. They descended the shallow steps into the ballroom. The crowd parted, not in welcome, but in shock. Elena could see faces she recognized from previous gatherings. Lady Ashford's mouth hanging open in disbelief, Lord Pemberton looking scandalized, the Dowager Duchess of Somerset's expression positively glacial. And there, near the center of the ballroom in a gown of pale gold that made her look like a vengeful goddess, stood Vivian Ashcroft. Their eyes met across the distance. Vivian's beautiful face showed nothing, no anger, no surprise, just perfect calculated composure. But her hand tightened on her fan until her knuckles showed white. Steady, Adrian murmured. Let them look. Let them whisper. We have nothing to hide. They moved through the crowd like ships through ice, the silence around them absolute. Elena kept her chin up, her expression calm, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She was acutely aware of the whispers that started in their wake, the hiss of silk as women leaned together to gossip, the measuring stares of men trying to understand what game was being played. Lord Pemberton, their host, had no choice but to greet them. He approached with visible reluctance, his round face flushed with discomfort. Your Grace, he said, bowing to Adrian, what an unexpected pleasure. Pemberton. Adrian's tone was cordial but carried an edge. Thank you for your hospitality. May I introduce Miss Elena Ward? She's been my guest this past week. The phrasing was deliberate, Elena realized. Not hiding her presence at Blackthorne House, but framing it in terms that suggested nothing improper. Pemberton's bow to Elena was perfunctory at best. "Miss Ward, welcome." "Thank you, Lord Pemberton," Elena said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "You have a beautiful home." Before their host could respond, or more likely, make an excuse to escape, a new voice cut through the tension. "How absolutely fascinating." Vivian Ashcroft glided toward them, her smile bright and poisonous. "Your Grace, I didn't expect to see you here tonight, given recent circumstances." "Lady Vivian," Adrian's voice could have frozen water. "I wasn't aware my social calendar required your approval." "Of course not. I merely thought you might prefer privacy while the scandal settles." Vivian's gaze slid to Elena, her blue eyes cold as winter sky. "And Miss Ward, how brave of you to venture out. I'm sure it must be terribly difficult facing society after what you've done." "What I've done," Elena repeated quietly, "is tell the truth. I'm at peace with that decision." "Are you?" Vivian's smile sharpened. "How remarkable. I wonder if you'll still feel that way when you understand the full consequences of your honesty." "Is that a threat, Lady Vivian?" Adrian's voice dropped to a dangerous register. "Merely an observation, Your Grace." Vivian's tone remained light, almost playful, but her eyes were hard. Truth is such a slippery concept, don't you think? What one person perceives as honesty, another might see as malicious interference. It all depends on perspective. "The facts aren't a matter of perspective," Elena said, finding her courage. "You were having an affair with Thomas Carrington. You plan to continue it after your marriage to the Duke. Those are facts, not interpretations." A collective gasp rippled through the nearby guests. Elena had just publicly accused an earl's daughter of adultery, or at least intended adultery. The social equivalent of throwing down a gauntlet. Vivian's mask of composure cracked for just a moment, fury flashing in her eyes. "How dare you? How dare I tell the truth?" Elena's voice strengthened. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not that I was wrong, but that I exposed something you wanted hidden. You're not angry because I lied. You're angry because I didn't." "You self-righteous little—" Vivian caught herself, glancing around at the fascinated audience they'd attracted. She lowered her voice, leaning closer. "You think you're so noble, don't you? Standing here on moral high ground, judging me for taking what small happiness I could in a world that would sell me to the highest bidder. But you're just as much a schemer as I am. You wanted Adrian for yourself, and you found a way to remove me from the picture." "That's not true," Elena said. "Isn't it? Then explain why you're living in his house, why you're here tonight on his arm, why a duke is defending a nobody with such passion." Vivian's smile was cruel. "I'm not the only one who sees it, Elena. Everyone here knows what you really are." "And what is that?" Adrian's voice cut like a blade. Vivian turned to him, her expression shifting to wounded innocence. "Your Grace, I bear you no ill will, despite everything. You were deceived by a clever woman who saved me from making the worst mistake of my life," Adrian interrupted. "Miss Ward showed me the truth about your character, Lady Vivian. She risked her own safety and reputation to do so, expecting nothing in return. That makes her braver and more honorable than anyone in this room, including myself." The ballroom had gone utterly silent. Every eye was fixed on them now, watching this drama unfold like spectators at a gladiator match. "You're defending her," Vivian said, disbelief coloring her tone. "After everything, after the scandal, the gossip, the damage to your own reputation, you're still defending her." "I am," Adrian said simply, "because she deserves defending, because what she did took courage this society seems to have forgotten how to value, and because I won't stand by while she's torn apart for doing the right thing." Vivian stared at him, something like genuine shock in her expression. Then her gaze shifted to Elena, and understanding dawned, followed by rage so intense it made Elena take an involuntary step back. "I see," Vivian said softly. "I see exactly what this is." "What are you talking about?" Adrian demanded. But Vivian was already turning away, her voice rising to carry across the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've all been witness to something quite extraordinary tonight. His Grace has made his choice clear. He prefers the company of a conniving fortune hunter to that of his peers. I wish you both the happiness you deserve." She swept away in a rustle of golden silk, leaving a wake of shocked whispers and speculative glances. "We should go," Elena murmured to Adrian. "This was a mistake." "No." His hand covered hers on his arm, holding her in place. "We stay. We show them we won't be driven out." But the damage was done. The ballroom erupted in conversation, low, urgent discussions punctuated by glances in their direction. Elena could feel the judgment, the condemnation, the absolute certainty in their eyes that she was exactly what Vivian had named her, a fortune hunter who'd schemed her way into a duke's household. A tall woman in emerald silk approached, the Dowager Duchess of Somerset, one of society's most formidable arbiters of propriety. Her silver hair was swept up in an elaborate style, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. Her expression was carved from ice. "Your Grace," she said to Adrian, ignoring Elena completely. "A word, if you please." "Of course, Your Grace." Adrian's tone was polite but wary. "In private." "Anything you wish to say to me can be said in front of Miss Ward." The Dowager's lips thinned. "Very well. I have known your family for 40 years, Adrian. I attended your christening, your father's funeral, your investiture. I have always held the Blackthorn name in the highest regard." "And now?" Adrian asked quietly. "Now I'm watching you destroy that name for a woman of questionable character and no breeding. This display tonight, bringing her here, defending her publicly, housing her in your residence, it's beneath you. Beneath the title you bear. Miss Ward's character is beyond reproach," Adrian said, his voice hardening. "And her breeding, as you so delicately put it, has nothing to do with her worth as a person." "Then you're more foolish than I thought." The Dowager's gaze finally shifted to Elena, her contempt naked. "You girl, do you understand what you've done? You've taken a respected duke and made him the subject of ridicule. You've damaged his standing, his reputation, his future prospects. Also, you could elevate yourself from obscurity." "That's not why Elena began. "I don't care why you did it. I care about the consequences. And the consequence is this. As long as you remain associated with His Grace, he will be shunned by decent society. Doors will close. Alliances will crumble. His political influence will evaporate." The Dowager stepped closer, her voice dropping. "If you have any genuine care for him, any at all, you'll remove yourself from his life immediately. Go back to whatever obscure corner you came from and let him rebuild what you've destroyed." The words struck like physical blows, because underneath the cruelty, there was truth. Adrian's public defense of her tonight had cost him. She could see it in the faces around them, former allies looking uncomfortable, political associates keeping their distance, even friends seeming uncertain. "Your Grace," Elena said quietly to the Dowager, "I appreciate your concern for the Duke, but I won't be bullied into disappearing. Not by you, not by Vivian Ashcroft, not by anyone." "Then you're a selfish fool as well as a social climber." The Dowager turned back to Adrian. "I'm disappointed in you, Adrian. Deeply disappointed. Your father would be ashamed." She swept away, and Elena felt Adrian's arm tense beneath her hand. "Don't listen to her," Elena said urgently. She's right." Adrian's voice was flat. "Not about you, but about the consequences. I hadn't fully considered how my defending you would affect my ability to advance the reforms I've been pushing in Parliament. The agricultural improvements, the factory safety regulations, those required political capital and strategic alliances. Capital and alliances I'm burning tonight." Guilt crashed over Elena like a wave. "Then we should go. You should distance yourself from me before—" "No." The word was sharp. "That's exactly what they want. For you to slink away in shame, confirming every ugly thing they believe about you. I won't let that happen." But even as he spoke, Elena could see the cost in his eyes. He was choosing her over his political goals, his social standing, perhaps even his legacy. And she was letting him. The evening dragged on in a nightmare of hostile stares and pointed exclusions. No one approached them except to deliver thinly veiled insults. The musicians played, couples danced, but Adrian and Elena stood in their own bubble of isolation, untouchable and untouched. Finally, mercifully, Adrian suggested they leave. They made their way toward the exit, and Elena felt the weight of judgment following them every step. As they reached the entrance hall, a voice called out, "Your Grace, a moment, please." Sebastian Thornfield pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with urgency. "I need to speak with you both, immediately. It's important." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" "Not here." Sebastian glanced around at the curious onlookers. "Outside?" "In your carriage." But they climbed into Adrian's coach, the door closing them into relative privacy. Sebastian leaned forward, his expression intense. "I found proof," he said without preamble. "About Vivian and Thomas Carrington. Better than proof. I found the money trail." Elena's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "Thomas has gambling debts all over London. Massive debts. Tens of thousands of pounds. I traced the payments. Vivian's father, Lord Ashcroft, has been covering them for the past 6 months. Every payment coincides with a significant milestone in Vivian's courtship with the Duke." Adrian leaned forward. "You're saying they were using my money, or the promise of it, to pay off Carrington's debts?" "Exactly. And there's more. I found letters, indiscreet ones, between Vivian and Thomas. A servant at the Ashcroft residence was willing to sell them for the right price. They detail the affair in explicit terms, including plans for after the wedding." Hope flared in Elena's chest. "Sebastian, this could exonerate me completely. Prove I wasn't lying." "It could." Sebastian pulled a packet of letters from his coat. "But there's a complication. Lord Ashcroft discovered I was investigating. He knows I have evidence that could ruin his daughter, and he's threatened to destroy Mother's reputation if I make any of this public. He has information about financial improprieties in my father's estate management, things that could bankrupt our family and land Mother in serious legal trouble." The hope died as quickly as it had sparked. "So we can't use it." "I didn't say that." Sebastian met her eyes. "I said there's a complication. But Elena, you're my family. You matter more to me than Mother's social standing or our family's finances. If you want me to publish these letters, to make Vivian's deception public and clear your name, I'll do it. Consequences be damned." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "Sebastian, I can't ask you to sacrifice your family for me." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He glanced at Adrian. "But this has to be your decision, Your Grace. You're the injured party. If you demand the truth be made public, I'll ensure it happens. The scandal will be enormous. Vivian's reputation will be obliterated, her family disgraced. But it will also drag everyone involved deeper into the mire. More gossip, more scandal, more damage." Adrian was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, "May I see the letters?" Sebastian handed them over. Adrian read through them, his face growing progressively darker. When he finished, he looked up. "These are damning, conclusive. With this evidence, we could destroy Vivian completely." "Yes," Sebastian confirmed. "But it would also confirm that Elena was living in my house during the investigation, that we were working together to expose Vivian. The scandal would consume all of us, Elena, myself, your family, the Ashcrofts. It would be war, total and devastating." "I know," Sebastian said. Adrian turned to Elena. "What do you want?" The question was simple, but the weight of it was crushing. She could clear her name, prove she'd been right all along, vindicate herself in the eyes of society. But the cost would be Sebastian's family, Adrian's remaining political capital, and the destruction of multiple lives, including Vivian's, who, despite her deceit and cruelty, was still a woman trapped in a system that had given her limited options. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "Part of me wants to burn it all down, to make them all see the truth, to prove I wasn't lying. But another part," she took a shaky breath, "another part knows that revenge won't give me back what I've lost. It won't make me belong in this world. It will just drag everyone else down with me." "That's very wise," Adrian said softly, "and very generous considering what Vivian has done to you." "It's not generosity, it's exhaustion." Elena looked at the letters in Adrian's hands. "I'm tired of fighting. Tired of this world where truth is less important than appearances, where doing the right thing gets you destroyed. Maybe the Dowager Duchess was right. Maybe I should just disappear. Let all of you rebuild without me." "No." Adrian's voice was sharp. That's not happening. Adrian, Your Grace, he corrected gently. We're in company. Your Grace, Elena said, frustration bleeding into her tone. You heard what they were saying tonight. You saw how they looked at you. I'm ruining your life. You're the best thing that's happened to my life in years, Adrian said, and the raw honesty in his voice made Sebastian cough uncomfortably. I should give you two privacy, Sebastian muttered, reaching for the door handle. Stay, Adrian commanded. Then to Elena, you think I care about their opinions? Their hypocritical judgments? I've spent 30 years playing by their rules, maintaining appearances, building alliances with people I don't respect for causes I barely believe in. And for what? A title I was born into and a fortune I did nothing to earn? That's not fair, Elena protested. You've done good work in Parliament. The agricultural reforms, the factory safety measures, which I can continue working on, regardless of what the Dowager Duchess of Somerset thinks of my choice in company. Adrian leaned forward, his intensity almost overwhelming. Elena, you saved me from a lifetime of being used. You showed me that honesty still exists in a world built on lies. I'm not going to abandon you because some narrow-minded aristocrats disapprove. But the cost is mine to pay. My choice. My consequences. His eyes held hers. Unless you want to leave. If you genuinely want to disappear, start fresh somewhere away from all this. I'll help you. I'll provide funds, references, anything you need. But don't leave because you think it's what I want. Don't sacrifice yourself to protect me from social embarrassment. Elena's throat tightened. She looked at Sebastian, who was determinedly studying the carriage ceiling to give them the illusion of privacy, then back at Adrian. I don't want to leave, she admitted, but I don't see how we move forward from here. Vivian has half of London convinced I'm a fortune hunter. The other half thinks I'm your mistress. How do we fight that? With the truth, Sebastian interjected. Not Vivian's truth and not the public version, but your truth. He pulled out another document. I took the liberty of drafting a statement, a factual account of what happened, what you overheard, why you felt compelled to warn the Duke. No embellishment, no attacks on Vivian, just your side of events. We publish it in the Times. Let people read it and decide for themselves. They'll call it self-serving propaganda, Elena said. Some will, but others, people who value honesty, who are tired of society's hypocrisy, they might believe you. And even if they don't, at least your truth will be on record. At least you'll have fought back. Sebastian's expression was earnest. You can't control what they think, Elena, but you can control your own story. Adrian nodded slowly. He's right. We publish your account. We don't use the letters yet. We give Vivian and her family a chance to accept the truth quietly and retreat. If they continue their attacks, then we escalate. And if the statement makes things worse, Elena asked. Then they get worse, Adrian said simply. But at least we're fighting back instead of cowering. Elena looked between them. Sebastian, who was risking his mother's wrath to help her. Adrian, who was burning his own social capital to defend her. Two men who barely knew her, offering everything they had because they believed in her. She didn't deserve them. But maybe, for once, she could accept help without shame. All right, Elena said. We publish my statement. We tell the truth. And we see what happens. Sebastian grinned. That's my girl. He handed her the draft. Read this over tonight. Make any changes you want. I'll have it in the Times by tomorrow morning. The carriage pulled up in front of Blackthorn House. Sebastian climbed out first, then paused. Elena, whatever happens tomorrow, you should know I'm proud of you. You're the bravest person I know. After he left, Adrian helped Elena down from the carriage. They stood for a moment in the torch-lit courtyard, the night air cold around them. Are you all right? Adrian asked quietly. I don't know, Elena admitted. Ask me tomorrow, after London reads my statement and decides whether I'm a hero or a villain. For what it's worth, I've already decided. Adrian's hand found hers, his fingers warm and strong. Hero, unquestionably. Elena managed a tired smile. You're biased. Absolutely. But that doesn't make me wrong. He squeezed her hand. Get some rest, Elena. Tomorrow is going to be difficult. She climbed the steps to her room, her her mind whirling with everything that had happened. The hostile ballroom, the dowager's condemnation, Sebastian's evidence, the decision to publish her truth. She was too keyed up to sleep, so she sat at the writing desk and read through Sebastian's draft. It was good. Factual, measured, compelling. It laid out exactly what she'd heard, why she'd felt compelled to act, and addressed the accusations against her directly. No dramatics, no emotional manipulation, just truth. Elena made a few small edits, clarifying certain details, then set it aside. Tomorrow, this would be in the Times. Tomorrow, all of London would read her side of the story. And tomorrow, Vivian Ashcroft would strike back. Elena was sure of it. She finally fell into an uneasy sleep near dawn, her dreams filled with hostile faces and accusing voices. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through her windows and someone was pounding urgently on her door. "Miss Ward! Miss Ward, please! You must wake up!" Mrs. Henshaw's voice panicked. Elena threw on a dressing gown and opened the door. The housekeeper's face was white with shock. "What's wrong?" "It's in the papers, miss, all of it. But not just your statement, there's more. Terrible things. You need to see." Mrs. Henshaw thrust several newspapers at her. Elena's statement was there, prominently featured in the Times. But beside it, in the scandal sheets and gossip columns, were other stories. Anonymous accusations claiming Elena had been seen entering a gentleman's club in disguise, that she'd received money from multiple men before settling on Adrian, that her parents had died in disgrace, not from fever and debt, but in a murder-suicide scandal she'd been covering up for years. Every lie was designed to destroy her character completely. And at the bottom of the most vicious article, a single line, "Sources close to Lady Vivian Ashcroft confirm these disturbing reports." Vivian had launched a full-scale attack. Not with facts or evidence, Elena's statement had the truth on its side. So instead, Vivian had weaponized lies so sensational, so scandalous, that the truth would be drowned in the noise. Elena's hands shook as she read through the accusations. Gentlemen's clubs, multiple lovers, her parents' supposed murder-suicide, each lie more outrageous than the last, but calculated to be just believable enough to stick. "This isn't true," Elena whispered. "None of this is true." "I know, miss, but—" Mrs. Henshaw gestured helplessly at the papers. "Half of London will have read this by now. They'll believe it. They want to believe it." Elena sank onto her bed, the newspapers scattered around her. She'd fought back with truth, and Vivian had countered with lies so vicious they made the truth irrelevant. She'd lost. A knock on the door, Adrian this time, still in his dressing gown, his hair disheveled. He must have just woken up. His eyes went immediately to the newspapers, his expression darkening. "I've seen them," he said grimly. "She's destroyed me." Elena's voice was hollow. "Completely destroyed me. Even people who might have believed my statement will think twice now. The accusations are too specific, too detailed. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Isn't that what they'll say? We'll sue for libel. We'll force retractions. That will take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, these lies will be all anyone knows about me." Elena looked up at him, feeling something break inside her. The Dowager Duchess was right. "I should leave. If I disappear now, the scandal will eventually die down. You can claim you were deceived by me too. Distance yourself." "No." Adrian crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "I will not let you run. I will not let them win. They already have won." "Not yet." His grip tightened. "Elena, listen to me. I have resources, influence, money. We can fight this. We can prove these accusations are lies." "How? They're all anonymous. There's nothing to disprove except the murder-suicide claim, and even proving my parents died of natural causes won't erase the doubt." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm ruined, Adrian. Completely, utterly ruined. And everyone associated with me will be ruined too, including you. Then we'll be ruined together." The simple declaration made her sob harder. He pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried, and Elena felt the full weight of her catastrophic choices finally crushing her. She'd been so sure that truth mattered, that doing the right thing would somehow work out. But the world didn't reward truth. It rewarded power, connections, The ability to destroy your enemies with pretty lies. And Elena Ward had none of those things. When she finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, Adrian's expression was fierce. "I'm going to fix this," he said. "You can't." "Watch me." He stood, his jaw set with determination. "Get dressed. We're going out." "Out? Adrian, we can't. People are already talking. Let them see you with your head held high. Let them see you're not broken." "But I am broken," Elena whispered. "Then I'll hold you together." He pulled her to her feet. "Trust me, please." She wanted to refuse, to hide in this room forever. But the desperate hope in his eyes made her nod. An hour later, they walked into Hyde Park at the height of the morning promenade, when all of fashionable London took their leisurely strolls and exchanged gossip. Heads turned the moment they appeared. Whispers erupted like brush fire. Women pulled their children closer as if Elena might contaminate them. Men stared with undisguised hostility. But Adrian kept walking, Elena's hand on his arm, refusing to acknowledge the hatred surrounding them. Until Vivian appeared directly in their path, flanked by two other society ladies. She looked radiant in pale pink, her golden hair gleaming in the sunlight. Her smile was victorious. "Your Grace," she said sweetly, "and Miss Ward, how brave of you both to show your faces after this morning's revelations." "Revelations?" Adrian's voice was cold. "You mean lies. Calculated, vicious lies designed to destroy an innocent woman's reputation." "Are they lies?" Vivian's eyes were wide with false innocence. "I merely shared what multiple sources had told me. If Miss Ward has evidence to prove otherwise, I'm sure we'd all be fascinated to see it." "You know I can't prove a negative," Elena said quietly. "That's why you chose these particular accusations. There's no way to definitively prove I didn't do something. Then I suppose we'll never know the truth." Vivian's smile widened. "What a shame. But perhaps it's for the best. After all, a woman with your history probably shouldn't be mixing with decent people anyway." Something snapped inside Elena. All the fear, the shame, the exhaustion, it crystallized into white-hot rage. "You're right," she said clearly. "We'll never know the truth about those lies. But we do know the truth about you, Vivian, about your affair with Thomas Carrington, about your family using Adrian's money to pay off Thomas's gambling debts, about your plan to continue the affair after the wedding while playing the dutiful Duchess." Vivian's smile froze. "And we have proof," Elena continued, her voice strengthening. "Letters, financial records, witness statements, everything we need to expose exactly what you are. A calculating woman who saw a good man as nothing but a resource to be exploited." "You're bluffing," Vivian said, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "Am I? Test me. Publish one more lie about me, make one more accusation, and I'll release everything. Every sordid detail of your affair, every payment your father made, every scheme you and Thomas planned. I'll burn your reputation to ash." The crowd around them had grown, dozens of people listening to this public confrontation. Vivian's mask slipped completely, fury contorting her beautiful features. "You wouldn't dare! My father would destroy your cousin's family." "Let him try," Elena said. "I'm done caring what powerful people think they can do to me. I've lost everything already. I have nothing left to fear. But you? You have so much to lose, Vivian. Your reputation, your marriage prospects, your family's standing. Are you willing to risk all of that on the chance that I'm bluffing?" Silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. The entire park seemed to hold its breath. Then Vivian stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only Elena and Adrian could hear. "You think you've won? You think this little display of courage changes anything? You're still nobody, still powerless, still completely beneath him." Her gaze flicked to Adrian. "And he'll realize it eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually the novelty of your noble suffering will wear off, and he'll see you for what you really are, a desperate woman who got lucky." "Perhaps," Elena said softly, "but at least I'll know I fought back. Can you say the same?" Vivian's eyes blazed. For a moment, Elena thought she might actually strike her. But then she seemed to regain control, her expression smoothing into cool disdain. "Enjoy your Pyrrhic victory, Miss Ward. I hope it keeps you warm when you're alone." She swept away, her companions following like ladies in waiting, leaving Elena and Adrian standing in the middle of the crowd. Then something extraordinary happened. A young woman stepped forward, someone Elena vaguely recognized from previous balls. She was perhaps 20, dressed in a modest day dress, her expression nervous but determined. "Miss Ward," she said quietly, "I believe you. About Lady Vivian. About everything. I saw her and Mr. Carrington together once, in the gardens at Lady Westmore's party. I didn't understand what I was seeing at the time, but now—" She took a breath. "You were brave to speak up. I wanted you to know that not everyone thinks you're lying." Before Elena could respond, another woman approached, then a man, then several more people, each offering quiet words of support or sharing their own observations that confirmed Elena's account. Not everyone. Not even most people. The majority of the crowd still watched with judgment and suspicion, but enough people stepped forward to create a small circle of support around Elena and Adrian, a buffer against the hostility. Elena felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time from gratitude rather than despair. "Thank you," she said to each person who spoke up. "Thank you for believing me." As they finally left the park, Elena felt something shift inside her. She hadn't won. Not really. The scandal would continue, the lies would persist, many doors would remain closed to her. But she'd fought back. She'd faced her worst enemy in public and refused to break. And some people had chosen to stand with her. It was a small victory, but after weeks of nothing but losses, it felt like everything. That night, as Elena prepared for bed, Mrs. Henshaw brought her a message that had been delivered by special courier. The handwriting was unfamiliar, elegant, and precise. Elena broke the seal and read, "Miss Ward, I am Duchess Catherine Hartwell, widow of the late Duke of Hartwell. I have followed your situation with great interest. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I would like you to call upon me at Hartwell House. Come alone. There is something you need to understand about the game you're playing. I suspect we have more in common than you realize." Elena stared at the note, her heart pounding. The Duchess of Hartwell was a legend in society, a woman who had married a duke 40 years her senior, survived his death, and his family's attempts to disinherit her, and emerged as one of the most powerful women in England. She rarely appeared in public anymore, but her influence ran deep. Why would she want to meet with Elena? There was only one way to find out. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Elena would walk into another lion's den. But this time, she wouldn't go in afraid. She'd go in ready for war. Hartwell House stood at the end of a tree-lined avenue in Mayfair, its pale stone facade weathered by decades of London rain but still imposing. Unlike the newer mansions with their ostentatious columns and gleaming windows, this house carried the weight of history. 4 generations of dukes had lived and died here, and the building seemed to remember every whispered secret, every calculated alliance, every battle fought in drawing rooms instead of battlefields. Elena stood at the iron gate at precisely 2 o'clock, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd told Adrian where she was going, and he'd wanted to accompany her, but the Duchess's note had been explicit: come alone. So Elena had put on her most respectable day dress, a deep green that brought out her eyes, and walked here through streets where people still whispered as she passed. The gate opened at her touch, well-oiled hinges silent. A butler appeared at the front door before she'd climbed halfway up the steps, his elderly face impassive. "Miss Ward, Her Grace is expecting you. This way, please." He led her through halls lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors, past rooms filled with furniture that had witnessed a century of scandal and triumph. The house was quieter than Blackthorn House, fewer servants visible, the atmosphere almost meditative in its stillness. The butler stopped at a door near the back of the house and knocked softly. "Miss Ward, Your Grace." "Send her in, Matthews." Elena stepped into what appeared to be a private study. Books lined 3 walls, floor to ceiling. The 4th wall was dominated by windows overlooking a walled garden where roses still bloomed despite the late season. A fire crackled in the hearth, and in a high-backed chair near the warmth sat a woman who commanded attention despite her small stature. Duchess Catherine Hartwell was perhaps 70, her silver hair swept up in an elegant style that had probably been fashionable 40 years ago, and somehow still looked regal. Her face showed every year she'd lived, lines carved deep around her eyes and mouth, but those eyes were sharp as a hawk's, missing nothing. She wore black as she had for the 20 years since her husband's death, but the cut and fabric spoke of wealth and impeccable taste. "Sit," the Duchess said, gesturing to a chair across from her. "Matthews, tea, then leave us." "Your Grace, I really should—" "I'm not an invalid, Matthews. Miss Ward isn't going to murder me in my own study. Tea and privacy, in that order." The butler bowed and withdrew. Elena sat carefully, feeling examined by those sharp eyes. "You're younger than I expected," the Duchess said finally. "And prettier, though not in the conventional way. Interesting face, character. You'll age well if you survive the next few months." "That's reassuring," Elena said, then immediately regretted the sarcasm. "I apologize, Your Grace. I didn't mean—" "Don't apologize for having spine. If I wanted a simpering fool, I'd have invited Lady Pemberton." The Duchess leaned back in her chair, studying Elena with unnerving intensity. "Do you know why I asked you here?" "No, Your Grace." "To see if the scandalous Miss Ward was worth the trouble she's causing, and to determine whether you're a clever opportunist or simply a fool who doesn't understand the game she's playing." "And what's your assessment?" A slight smile touched the Duchess's lips. "You have courage, I'll give you that. Most women in your position would be cowering in whatever hole they could find. Instead, you confronted Vivian Ashcroft in Hyde Park yesterday and made her blink first. That takes either bravery or stupidity, and I'm still deciding which." Matthews returned with tea, poured for both of them with practiced efficiency, then disappeared again. The Duchess took a delicate sip before continuing. "I'm going to tell you a story, Miss Ward. 43 years ago, I was Catherine Bennett, daughter of a country vicar, no fortune, no connections, no prospects beyond marrying some local farmer and bearing his children. But I was clever and beautiful, and when the Duke of Hartwell visited our parish, I made sure he noticed me." Elena remained silent, sensing this wasn't the moment to interrupt. "He was 62. I was 19. Society was scandalized when he announced our engagement. A duke marrying so far beneath his station, choosing youth and beauty over alliance and bloodline. They called me a fortune hunter, a schemer, a whore dressed in expensive silk." The Duchess's voice was matter-of-fact, no trace of bitterness. "They weren't entirely wrong. I did scheme to catch his attention. I did want the security and comfort his wealth could provide. But I also gave him something in return: companionship, genuine affection, and loyalty until his dying breath." "Why are you telling me this?" Elena asked quietly. "Because I see myself in you, child. Not the scheming. You're far too honest for that particular survival strategy, but the determination to forge your own path despite society's condemnation. The refusal to accept the limitations others try to impose." The Duchess set down her teacup. "When Hartwell died, his family tried to contest the will. They claimed I'd manipulated a senile old man, that I had no right to the fortune and properties he'd left me. The legal battle lasted 3 years and cost me dearly, in money, reputation, and peace of mind. But you won." "I won because I understood something crucial. In this world, perception is reality until you can make the truth more compelling than the lies." The Duchess leaned forward. "You've been fighting with truth, Miss Ward. Admirable, but insufficient. Truth without power is just noise. What you need is strategy." Elena felt a spark of hope. "What kind of strategy?" "The kind that turns your greatest liability into your greatest asset. Right now, you're the woman who destroyed an engagement out of jealousy. That's the narrative Vivian and her allies have built. You need to create a counter-narrative so powerful it drowns out their lies." "How?" The Duchess smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. "By becoming indispensable to people more powerful than the Ashcrofts, by demonstrating value beyond mere scandal, by making society need you more than they hate you." "I don't understand." "Then listen carefully, because I'm only going to explain this once." The Duchess rose and moved to her desk, pulling out a leather portfolio. "I have spent 4 decades building influence in this city. I know which lords are drowning in debt, which ladies are hiding affairs, which families are one scandal away from ruin. I know where the bodies are buried, sometimes literally, and I'm willing to share that knowledge with you." Elena's breath caught. "Why would you do that?" Because you remind me of who I was before this world nearly broke me. Because Vivian Ashcroft is a petty, cruel girl who needs to learn that actions have consequences. And because the Duchess's expression softened slightly. Because Adrian Blackthorne is a good man, one of the few left in this cesspool of aristocracy, and he's chosen to defend you at great personal cost. That suggests you're worth defending. You know Adrian? I've known him since he was a boy. His father and my late husband were friends. I've watched Adrian grow into the title, seen him struggle with duty and desire, power and principle. He's always chosen duty, always done what was expected. The Duchess returned to her chair. Until you're the first time he's chosen something for himself. Damn the consequences. That's rare enough to be precious. Elena felt her cheeks warm. His Grace and I aren't you? The Duchess's knowing look made Elena fall silent. Perhaps not yet, but you will be if you both survive this scandal intact. Which brings me to my proposal. Proposal? I'm hosting a salon next week, a gathering of the most influential women in London, political wives, wealthy widows, society arbiters who decide which invitations matter and which doors stay closed. They'll all attend because refusing me is social suicide. The Duchess's smile was predatory. And you'll attend as my guest of honor. Elena's stomach dropped. Your Grace, with respect, that sounds like walking into an execution. It would be if you went in unprepared, but you won't be. Between now and then, I'm going to teach you exactly how to survive in this world, how to read power dynamics, how to turn insults into advantages, how to make allies of enemies, and most importantly, how to tell your story in a way that makes them see you as I do, not as a threat to be eliminated, but as a force to be reckoned with. I don't know if I can. You can. You've already proven that. You stood up to Vivian in Hyde Park and made her retreat. You survived the Pemberton Ball without breaking. You have the raw courage, Miss Ward. I'm offering to give you the weapons to make that courage count. Elena looked at the elderly Duchess, this woman who had survived her own scandal and emerged powerful enough to make society bend to her will. The offer was extraordinary and terrifying. What do you want in return? Elena asked. Surely this isn't charity. The Duchess laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Smart girl. No, it's not charity. In return, I want your loyalty. When I need information, you'll provide it. When I need someone to champion a cause the other society matrons won't touch, you'll be my voice. And when Adrian eventually proposes, yes, child, when, not if, I want your promise that you'll use your position as Duchess to help other women like us. The ones who don't fit the mold, who dare to want more than society says they deserve. The assumption that Adrian would propose made Elena's head spin, but she pushed that aside to focus on what mattered. You want me to become your protege. I want you to become my successor. I'm 70 years old, Miss Ward. I won't live forever. The network of influence I've built, the power I wield, it needs to go to someone who will use it wisely. Someone who understands what it's like to be underestimated and discarded. Someone with a conscience. There must be other candidates, women with better backgrounds, more connections. There are women with better bloodlines, the Duchess agreed, but none with your particular combination of integrity and steel. None who've already proven they'll risk everything for truth. That's what I need, Elena. May I call you Elena? Yes, Your Grace. Good. Then stop arguing and accept my help before I change my mind. Elena took a shaky breath. This was a lifeline, possibly her only one, but it was also a binding commitment to a woman she'd met 15 minutes ago, a promise to enter even deeper into the political machinations she'd been trying to escape. But what choice did she have? Without allies, without strategy, she would be crushed eventually. The truth alone hadn't been enough. Maybe it was time to fight fire with fire. I accept, Elena said, and thank you, Your Grace. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be brutal. The Duchess rang a small bell. Matthews will show you to the library. You'll spend the next 3 hours reading through dossiers on every woman who will attend my salon. By the end of the week, you'll know their weaknesses, their ambitions, and exactly how to appeal to each one. Now go. We have work to do. The next 5 days were a whirlwind of preparation that made Elena's head spin. Every morning, she arrived at Hartwell House at 9 and didn't leave until evening. The Duchess was a demanding teacher, drilling Elena on names, histories, scandals, and power structures with the precision of a general planning a military campaign. "Lady Pemberton," the Duchess would snap, holding up a photograph. "Wife of Lord Pemberton, 3 daughters, all unmarried, desperate to secure good matches. Her weakness is social anxiety. She follows whoever seems most confident. Approach. Compliment her daughters, suggest I could introduce them to eligible gentlemen through your Grace's connections." The Dowager Duchess of Somerset? Widow of the late Duke, influential but losing ground to younger society leaders. Deeply traditional, values, bloodline, and propriety above all. Her weakness is fear of irrelevance. Approach. Defer to her experience, ask her advice, make her feel like the respected elder stateswoman. Vivian Ashcroft, if she has the audacity to attend? Elena's jaw tightened. Daughter of an earl, former fiancée of Duke Blackthorne, currently fighting to salvage her reputation after the broken engagement. Her weakness is pride. She can't resist showing off when she thinks she's winning. Approach. Kill her with kindness. Be so gracious she can't attack without looking petty. The Duchess smiled approvingly. Excellent. You're learning. Between sessions at Hartwell House, Elena returned to Blackthorne House, where Adrian waited each evening with questions about her day, concern etched in his features. She told him about the Duchess's plan, the upcoming salon, the intensive preparation. "Catherine Hartwell is a formidable ally," Adrian said one evening as they dined together, a habit they'd fallen into, propriety be damned. "But she's also ruthless. Be careful what promises you make her." "I don't have many choices," Elena pointed out. "Without her support, I'm still just the woman who destroyed your engagement." "You're more than that." Adrian's voice was quiet but intense. "You're the woman who saved me from a disastrous marriage. The woman who stood up in Hyde Park and faced down her enemies. The woman who refuses to break no matter how hard they push." Elena felt heat creep up her neck. "I'm also the woman living unchaperoned in your house, ruining your reputation just by existing in your vicinity." "I don't care about my reputation." "You should. The Duchess says perception is reality in this world. If people believe we're—" She couldn't quite finish the sentence. "Having an affair?" Adrian supplied, one eyebrow raised. "Let them believe it. At least then there would be some benefit to the scandal." "Adrian." "Your Grace," he corrected with a slight smile, but the smile faded as he leaned forward. "Elena, I need you to understand something. Whatever happens at this salon, whatever games Catherine is teaching you to play, don't lose yourself in them. Don't become another calculating society manipulator just to survive. Isn't that what your world requires? Perhaps, but it's not what I require." His gray-green eyes held hers. "I value your honesty, your refusal to play by their corrupt rules. If you lose that in the process of winning their approval, then we've all lost something more important than reputation." The sincerity in his voice made Elena's throat tight. "I'll try, but I need to survive first before I can worry about staying true to myself." "Then survive," Adrian said softly. "But promise me you'll still be you when this is over." "I promise." The night before the salon, Elena couldn't sleep. She paced her room at Blackthorne House, reviewing everything the Duchess had taught her, every weakness and strength of every woman who would attend. Her mind was a whirl of names and strategies, approaches and contingencies. A soft knock on her door made her jump. "Yes?" "It's me." Adrian's voice, quiet through the wood. Elena opened the door to find him still dressed, despite the late hour, his expression concerned. "I saw your light. Couldn't sleep either?" "Too much to think about." "May I come in? Just for a moment. I know it's improper, but at this point, impropriety is the least of my concerns." Elena stepped back, letting him enter. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkened garden. "I've been thinking," Adrian said finally, "about tomorrow, about what you're walking into. Catherine's salon is going to be brutal, Elena. Those women are experts at verbal warfare. They'll smile while they cut you to ribbons." "I know. The Duchess has prepared me. Has she prepared you for the fact that some of them will never accept you, no matter how perfectly you perform?" That you could do everything right and still be rejected? Elena moved to stand beside him at the window. Yes, she's been very clear about that possibility. And you're still going to do it. What choice do I have? Hide forever? Let Vivian win? Watch you lose political capital because you're defending me? Elena shook her head. No, I'd rather go down fighting. Adrian turned to face her, and in the dim lamplight his expression was unreadable. You're extraordinary. Do you know that? I'm terrified. Brave people usually are. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that I'm proud of you and grateful. And he stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Elena's heart hammered as she looked up at him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how intimate this moment felt. And? She prompted softly. And invested, Adrian finished, though the word felt incomplete, like he'd substituted something safer for what he'd really wanted to say. In your success, your happiness, your future. Adrian, I should go. He stepped back, breaking the spell. You need rest. Tomorrow is important. After he left, Elena stood at the window for a long time, her fingers touching the spot on her cheek where his hand had been. The conversation had felt charged with something unspoken, heavy with possibility and restraint. But tomorrow wasn't about whatever was or wasn't growing between them. Tomorrow was about survival, and she intended to walk out of that salon standing upright. The Duchess's townhouse was smaller than Blackthorn House, but exquisitely appointed, every detail speaking of refined taste and considerable wealth. When Elena arrived at 3 o'clock, fashionably late as the Duchess had instructed, the drawing room was already filled with London's most influential women. Elena paused in the doorway, her stomach churning with nerves. 20 pairs of eyes turned to assess her, some curious, some hostile, some carefully neutral. She recognized most of them from her studies. Lady Pemberton looking anxious, the Dowager Duchess of Somerset appearing disdainful, Lady Ashford watchful, and a dozen others whose approval or condemnation could make or break her future. And there, near the window in a gown of ice blue that matched her cold expression, stood Vivian Ashcroft. The Duchess appeared at Elena's elbow, her hand firm on Elena's arm. Ladies, I believe you all know Miss Elena Ward, though perhaps not as well as you think. Elena, my dear, come sit beside me. The Duchess led Elena to a prominent chair near the fireplace, a position of honor that made several women exchange surprised glances. As Elena sat, trying to look composed despite her racing heart, she caught Vivian's eye. The blonde woman's smile was sharp as broken glass. How cozy, Vivian said, her voice carrying across the room. The scandalous Miss Ward, elevated to guest of honor. Your Grace, you do enjoy championing lost causes. I enjoy championing intelligent women who've been underestimated, the Duchess corrected smoothly. But I can understand how you might confuse the two concepts, Lady Vivian, given your recent experiences. A few nervous laughs rippled through the room. Vivian's smile tightened. Well, Lady Pemberton said, clearly uncomfortable with the tension, shall we have tea? Servants moved through the room with trays of delicate sandwiches and pastries. Elena accepted a cup of tea, grateful for something to do with her hands. The Duchess launched into casual conversation about the latest opera, the recent parliamentary session, a charity bazaar being planned, topics designed to put everyone at ease. But Elena could feel the undercurrent of hostility, the questions burning beneath the polite small talk. Finally, Lady Ashford, bolder than the others, asked what everyone was thinking. Miss Ward, I must admit to curiosity, given the recent unpleasantness, what made you accept Her Grace's invitation today? Every woman in the room leaned forward slightly, waiting for Elena's response. This was the moment. She could retreat into apology and deference, or she could claim her ground. Elena set down her teacup with deliberate care. I accepted because I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting others tell my story for me, and because Her Grace offered me what no one else has, the opportunity to be heard rather than simply judged. How noble, Vivian said acidly, though I notice you're quite comfortable being heard now that you have a duchess protecting you. Where was this courage when you were spreading malicious gossip about me? I never spread gossip, Elena said, keeping her voice level. I told one person, the Duke of Blackthorn, what I personally overheard. What he chose to do with that information was his decision, not mine. How convenient. You whisper poison in a man's ear and then claim no responsibility for the consequences. I told the truth. If the truth was poisonous, that says more about your actions than mine. Gasps echoed through the room. The Dowager Duchess of Somerset leaned forward, her expression severe. Miss Ward, these are serious accusations you're making. Do you have proof of Lady Vivian's supposed indiscretions? This was the trap. If Elena admitted she had proof, she'd be forced to produce it, which would drag Sebastian's family into the scandal. If she admitted she had no proof, she'd confirm everyone's suspicion that she was a liar. The Duchess's voice cut through before Elena could answer. The question isn't whether Elena has proof. The question is whether any of you truly care about proof, or if you've already decided what you believe based on whose social position is more convenient to protect. Silence fell like a guillotine blade. I've watched this city's society for 4 decades, the Duchess continued, her voice hard. I've seen reputations destroyed on rumors and fortunes built on lies. I've watched good people ground to dust while scoundrels prospered, all because we collectively decided that maintaining comfortable fictions was more important than acknowledging uncomfortable truths. And I'm tired of it. Your Grace, the Dowager Duchess said carefully, surely you're not suggesting we simply believe Miss Ward's uncorroborated claims. I'm suggesting you use your considerable intelligence to ask why those claims ring true to so many people. The Duchess's gaze swept the room. How many of you have seen Vivian and Thomas Carrington together at parties? How many have noticed the way they look at each other, the frequency with which they disappear during gatherings? How many have chosen to ignore what you've seen because acknowledging it would be inconvenient? Several women shifted uncomfortably. Lady Ashford looked away. Even Lady Pemberton seemed troubled. I've seen them, a quiet voice said. Lady Margaret Thornton, a young widow Elena vaguely recognized. At the Westmore party in August. They were in the conservatory. The way they were standing, the way he was touching her, it wasn't appropriate for friends. That proves nothing, Vivian said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. I saw them too, another woman added. At the theater in September. They were in a private box, and when I passed by, they were... She paused delicately. Very close. More women began speaking up, sharing small observations that individually meant little but collectively painted a damning picture. Vivian's face had gone pale, her composure cracking. This is absurd, she said, standing abruptly. You're all conspiring against me based on nothing but Elena Ward's jealous imagination. I have letters, Elena said quietly. The room went silent. What? Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. I have letters between you and Thomas Carrington, explicit ones, and financial records showing your father paid off his gambling debts throughout your engagement to the Duke. Elena stood facing Vivian directly. I didn't want to use them. I hoped we could all move forward without dragging every ugly detail into the light, but you've given me no choice. You're bluffing. Am I? Elena pulled a single letter from her reticule. Sebastian had given her one as insurance. Should I read this aloud? The part where you discuss your wedding night with the Duke while planning to meet Thomas the following week? Or the section where you calculate how much of Adrian's fortune you'll be able to access once you're married? Vivian lunged forward, trying to snatch the letter. Elena stepped back, and the Duchess rose with surprising speed for her age, positioning herself between them. Enough, the Duchess commanded. Lady Vivian, sit down. Now. Vivian stood frozen, her beautiful face twisted with fury and humiliation. Then slowly, she sank back into her chair. Miss Ward, the Duchess said, please give me the letter. Elena hesitated, then handed it over. The Duchess glanced at it briefly, her expression hardening, then set it aside. Ladies, the Duchess said, addressing the room, you've all heard the accusations and counter-accusations. You've seen the evidence. Now you must decide what you believe and, more importantly, what kind of society you want to be part of. One that rewards truth and punishes deception? Or one that protects the powerful regardless of their crimes and destroys the honest regardless of their courage? The Dowager Duchess of Somerset was the first to speak. Your Grace, I must admit, I had my doubts about Miss Ward, but the testimony we've heard today, combined with what I myself have observed. She turned to Elena. I believe I owe you an apology, Miss Ward. I judged you harshly without knowing all the facts. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Your Grace. One by one, other women spoke up, not all of them, but enough, offering apologies, admitting they'd seen things they'd ignored, acknowledging that Elena had been treated unfairly. The tide was turning. Vivian sat in silence, her mask completely shattered, tears streaming down her face. Elena almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then she remembered the vicious lies in the newspapers, the murder-suicide accusations, the systematic campaign to destroy Elena's life. I want you to know something, Elena said to Vivian. I'm not going to publish those letters. I'm not going to ruin you the way you tried to ruin me. Vivian looked up, surprise and suspicion in her red-rimmed eyes. Why not? Because I'm not you. Because I don't want to be the kind of person who destroys others, even when they deserve it. Because somewhere under all that calculated cruelty, you're just a woman who felt trapped by this society's expectations and chose a terrible way to rebel. Elena's voice softened. I don't forgive you, but I won't be your executioner either. How magnanimous, Vivian said bitterly. It's not magnanimity, it's exhaustion. I'm tired of fighting. I just want to live my life without constantly looking over my shoulder for your next attack. Then what do you want from me? Elena considered. A truce. You stop spreading lies about me. I don't publish the proof of your affair. You rebuild your reputation honestly. I rebuild mine. We both move forward. Vivian stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. A truce. The Duchess clapped her hands once, a sound like a judge's gavel. Excellent. Ladies, I believe we've had quite enough drama for one afternoon. Let's finish our tea like civilized people and put this unpleasantness behind us. The tension in the room eased fractionally. Conversation resumed, still awkward but no longer hostile. Women who had been coldly ignoring Elena began including her in discussions. Lady Pemberton actually smiled at her. Even the Dowager Duchess of Somerset managed a stiff nod of acknowledgement. Elena sat back down, feeling drained but victorious. She'd walked into the lion's den and emerged not just alive, but vindicated. It wasn't complete victory. Some women still looked skeptical, and social acceptance would take time, but it was a beginning. The Duchess leaned close and whispered, Well done, my dear. You handled that perfectly. I couldn't have done it without your coaching. Perhaps, but you had the courage to actually execute the plan. That was all you. The Duchess patted her hand. Welcome to the game, Elena. You're going to be formidable. As the salon wound down and guests began taking their leave, Elena found herself surrounded by women offering tentative olive branches, invitations to future gatherings, suggestions for charitable work, compliments on her courage. It was overwhelming after weeks of hostility. Vivian left without saying goodbye, her spine rigid with humiliation. Elena watched her go and felt no triumph, just tired relief that the war might finally be ending. When Elena finally returned to Blackthorn House that evening, Adrian was waiting in the library. He looked up as she entered, anxiety clear in his eyes. How did it go? Elena collapsed into a chair, suddenly exhausted. I think I won. You think? The Duchess orchestrated it perfectly. Several women came forward with their own observations about Vivian and Thomas. When I produced the letter, it was the final proof they needed. The Dowager Duchess of Somerset actually apologized to me. Adrian's face broke into a rare, genuine smile. Catherine always was a brilliant strategist, but it was you who had the courage to face them. Vivian and I called a truce. I won't publish the letters. She'll stop the attacks. Do you trust her to keep her word? No, but I think she's too humiliated to continue fighting. She knows I have the power to destroy her completely if she breaks the truce. That should be deterrent enough. Adrian moved to the sideboard and poured 2 glasses of brandy, handing one to Elena, to Truth and Courage, and to the woman who refused to let them break her. Elena accepted the glass, feeling warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the alcohol. I couldn't have survived this without you. You know that, don't you? Your support, your protection. You would have found a way, Adrian said firmly. You're too stubborn to give up. Stubborn or stupid? Both, probably. His smile softened. But mostly brave. Impossibly, recklessly brave. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping brandy and watching the fire crackle. Elena felt the tension of the past weeks finally beginning to ease. It wasn't over. Rebuilding her reputation would take time, and society's memory was long. But the immediate crisis had passed. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we move forward. You continue working with Catherine, building influence and connections. I return to my work in Parliament, push for the reforms that matter. We show London that we won't be cowed by scandal or intimidation. Adrian set down his glass. And we figure out what this is between us. Elena's breath caught. This? Don't pretend you haven't felt it, Elena. The pull between us. The way conversations feel charged, the way we gravitate toward each other. His gray-green eyes held hers. I've been trying to be honorable. Trying not to take advantage of your vulnerability or dependence. But I'm tired of pretending there's nothing here. Adrian, I'm not asking for promises or decisions tonight. You've been through hell these past weeks. The last thing you need is pressure from me. But I need you to know, when you're ready, when the scandal has settled and you're sure of your own mind, I'll be here, waiting, hoping. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. She'd known, of course. She'd felt the connection between them, the way his presence steadied her, the way his defense made her feel protected and valued. But hearing him acknowledge it out loud made it real in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I don't want you to wait, Elena heard herself say. I don't want to be cautious anymore, to calculate every move based on what society expects. I've spent my whole life being careful, and where did it get me? I'd rather be reckless with someone I trust than safe and alone. Adrian's expression shifted, surprise, then hope, then something deeper. Elena, don't make promises you might regret, she interrupted. Don't say things just because you feel grateful or protective. But if this is real, if you truly want to see where this leads, then so do I. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face with unexpected gentleness. This is real, he said, his voice low and certain. More real than anything has been in years. Then he kissed her, and Elena felt the world narrow to this moment. His mouth on hers, his hands in her hair, the solid strength of him against her. It was nothing like the chaste kisses of her few previous suitors. This was claiming and surrender, passion barely restrained, a promise of something transformative. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. We should probably talk about this, he said. Probably, Elena agreed. Figure out what it means, what we want from each other, how to navigate the social implications. All very sensible considerations. But not tonight. Definitely not tonight. Elena smiled up at him. Tonight, I just want to enjoy the fact that I survived, that we survived, and that maybe, possibly, something good might come from all this chaos. More than something good, Adrian said softly, something extraordinary. And standing there in the firelight, wrapped in each other's arms, Elena dared to believe him. The war wasn't over. There would be more battles, more scandals, more people trying to tear them down. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Elena felt like they might actually win. Not just survive, win. And that changed everything. The kiss changed everything, yet somehow changed nothing at all. When Elena woke the next morning in her rooms at Blackthorn House, the world looked the same. Sunlight streaming through the windows, the distant sounds of servants beginning their day, the familiar weight of scandal still hovering over her name. But something fundamental had shifted inside her, a certainty that hadn't existed before. She was no longer fighting alone. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Henshaw entered with a breakfast tray and an expression that managed to be both pleased and disapproving. "Good morning, miss. His Grace requests your presence in the breakfast room when you're ready, and this arrived by messenger." She held out a cream envelope sealed with the Hartwell crest. Elena broke the seal and read the Duchess's elegant script. My dear Elena, word of yesterday's salon has spread faster than I anticipated. Lady Somerset called this morning to discuss establishing a charitable foundation for women in difficult circumstances. She wants you to help organize it. 3 other ladies have sent similar requests. You've become that rarest of creatures, a woman society needs. Well done. But don't let success make you complacent. The real work begins now. CHPS, I assume the Duke has declared himself by now. Do try to maintain some semblance of propriety until the engagement is official. My endorsement can only shield you from so much scandal. Elena felt heat creep up her neck. Was she that transparent? Or was the Duchess simply that perceptive? She dressed carefully in a rose-colored morning gown that the Duchess had insisted she purchase. You can't rebuild a reputation in gray wool, child, and made her way downstairs. Adrian was already in the breakfast room, reading correspondence over coffee. He looked up when she entered, and the warmth in his eyes made her stomach flutter. Good morning, he said, setting aside his letters. I trust you slept well. Well enough. Elena accepted the coffee a footman poured for her. The Duchess writes that I'm apparently in demand for charitable committees. I'm not surprised. Catherine's endorsement carries considerable weight, and your performance at the salon impressed the right people. Adrian's expression grew more serious. But there's something we need to discuss. Elena's heart sank. Here it came. The morning after regrets, the careful retreat from declarations made in firelight and emotion. Of course. Don't look like that, Adrian said softly. I'm not taking back anything I said last night. Quite the opposite, actually. I've been thinking about our situation, the scandal, the social implications, the way forward. And I think we should stop hiding. Stop pretending there's nothing between us. Stop letting society dictate our choices. He leaned forward, his voice intent. Elena, I want to court you, properly, publicly. Let London see that this isn't some sordid affair or opportunistic alliance. Let them see that I choose you freely, deliberately, because you're extraordinary. That will cause another scandal? Probably. But we've already survived the worst they can throw at us. What's one more round of gossip compared to what we've endured? His hand found hers across the table. Unless you have doubts, unless you need more time to... No. Elena's voice was firm. No doubts. But Adrian, you need to understand what you're risking. Your political career, your social standing, your family's reputation. If you court me openly, there's no going back. You'll be choosing me over all of that. I know. His thumb traced circles on her palm. And I'm choosing you anyway. I've spent 30 years doing what was expected, marrying who was appropriate, building a life that looked perfect from the outside while feeling hollow within. Then you walked into it, stubborn, honest, impossible, and everything changed. I'm not giving that up for approval from people whose respect I don't even want. Your father would be horrified. Yes, he was all about duty and dynasty and maintaining appearances. Adrian's expression softened. But he's gone, and I'm tired of living for ghosts. I want to build something real, Elena, with you, if you'll have me. This wasn't a proposal, not yet, but it was a promise of one, a declaration of intent that made Elena's heart race with equal parts terror and exhilaration. Then we do this properly, Elena said. No more hiding, no more apologizing for existing. We court openly, let society judge as they will, and prove that truth and genuine affection matter more than their narrow rules. Adrian smiled, that rare expression that transformed his severe features into something approaching joy. When did you become so brave? Around the time I decided social suicide was preferable to lying. Elena squeezed his hand. Though having a duke on my side certainly helps. Not a duke, Adrian corrected gently. Just a man who's fallen for a woman far above his station in every way that matters. The absurdity of that statement, a duke claiming she was above his station, made Elena laugh, and the sound felt like freedom. The next weeks unfolded with a momentum that left Elena breathless. Adrian began escorting her to every social function that would admit them, his hand always at her elbow, his support unwavering. The Duchess continued her tutelage, introducing Elena to politicians' wives and society leaders, carefully building a network of allies. And slowly, grudgingly, London began to shift its opinion. It started small. An invitation to Lady Pemberton's musicale, a nod of acknowledgement from Lady Ashford at the opera. The Dowager Duchess of Somerset actually engaging Elena in conversation at a charity auction. Each tiny acceptance was a brick in the foundation of her rebuilt reputation, but there were still those who refused to forgive. 3 weeks after the salon, Elena attended a dinner party at the home of Lord and Lady Westmore, political allies of Adrian's whose support was crucial for his parliamentary work. The evening had gone smoothly until dessert, when Lady Caroline Westmore, a sharp-tongued widow notorious for her cutting remarks, decided to make Elena her target. "Tell me, Miss Ward," Caroline said, her voice carrying across the table, "how does one go from charity case to Duchess-in-waiting in a matter of weeks? I'm sure there are quite a few young ladies who would love to know your secret." Silence fell. All eyes turned to Elena, waiting to see how she'd respond to this calculated insult. 6 weeks ago, Elena would have blushed and stammered and tried to defend herself. But 6 weeks ago, she hadn't survived a public confrontation with Vivian Ashcroft or earned the Duchess of Hartwell's mentorship. "I'm not sure Duchess-in-waiting is accurate," Elena said pleasantly. "His Grace and I are courting, not engaged. As for the secret," she met Caroline's gaze steadily. "I suppose it's simply telling the truth, even when it's costly. Novel concept, I realize, but surprisingly effective." A few nervous laughs rippled around the table. Caroline's eyes narrowed. "How refreshing. Though I wonder if His Grace's family shares his enthusiasm for your particular brand of honesty. The Blackthorns have always valued bloodline and breeding." "They have," Adrian interjected, his voice cool. "But I value integrity and courage. My family will understand that, or they won't. Either way, my choice stands." "How romantic." Caroline's smile was sharp. "I do hope it lasts beyond the novelty stage." "Caroline," Lord Westmore said sharply, "that's quite enough." But the damage was done. Elena could see the speculation in other guests' eyes, the questions about whether Adrian's interest was genuine or simply the thrill of rebellion against his class. That night, lying awake in her room, Elena couldn't shake Caroline's words. What if she was right? What if Adrian's fascination with her was just novelty, the appeal of someone so different from his usual world? What if, once the scandal faded and life became mundane, he'd realize he'd made a terrible mistake? The knock on her door was so soft she almost missed it. "Elena? It's Sebastian." She opened the door to find her cousin looking worried. "I heard about the dinner party. Caroline Westmore has never been known for her tact." "She wasn't wrong, though," Elena said quietly. "I don't belong in Adrian's world. Not really. I'm playing a part, wearing clothes the Duchess chose, saying things she taught me to say, but underneath, I'm still the charity case who didn't fit anywhere." Sebastian stepped into the room, his expression fierce. "Stop. You're not playing a part. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. Someone strong enough to challenge the system instead of being crushed by it." He pulled a letter from his coat. "This arrived for you. I thought you should see it immediately." Elena unfolded the paper and recognized her aunt's handwriting. "Elena, I have heard of your recent social successes. Lady Somerset visited yesterday and spoke at length about your charity work and courage. She suggested that my treatment of you had been regrettable. I am not a woman who apologizes easily. But I wronged you, niece. I chose social preservation over family, fear over loyalty. When you needed me most, I turned you out rather than stand beside you. I cannot undo that choice, but I can acknowledge it was wrong. You have proven yourself in ways I never imagined possible. You took the truth I taught you to fear and weaponized it against the very society I taught you to appease. I am proud of you, and ashamed of myself. If you can forgive me enough to visit, I would like the opportunity to tell you so in person. Your aunt, Cecilia." Elena read the letter twice, tears blurring the words. It wasn't a perfect apology. Her aunt was too proud for that. But it was real, honest. "Are you going to see her?" Sebastian asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me is still angry about being thrown out like yesterday's garbage." "She's trying, Elena. That's more than most people in her position would do." Sebastian's hand found her shoulder. You've changed things. Not just for yourself, but for all of us. Mother sees the world differently now because you forced her to. That's worth something. Maybe it was. Maybe the victory wasn't just in rebuilding her own life, but in making others question the rules they'd always accepted. I'll think about it, Elena said finally. Over the next month, Elena's life continued its strange transformation. She worked with Lady Somerset on the Women's Charity Foundation, which aimed to provide support and education for women left destitute by circumstance. She attended the Duchess's salon regularly, building relationships with women who had once scorned her. And she continued her public courtship with Adrian, their growing affection obvious to anyone who cared to look. But the final test came in early December when Adrian invited her to Blackthorn Abbey, the family estate in the country, to meet his mother and sisters. "I won't lie to you," Adrian said as their carriage rolled through the countryside. "My mother is traditional. She had high hopes for my marriage to Vivian. Finding out I'm courting you instead has been difficult for her to accept. Should I be preparing for battle? More like careful negotiation. My mother doesn't attack directly. She uses disappointment as a weapon." Adrian squeezed her hand. "But my sisters are curious about you. Margaret especially. She's tired of society's restrictions and sees you as something of a hero." Blackthorn Abbey appeared on the horizon like something from a storybook. Ancient stone, towers reaching toward gray winter sky, grounds that stretched for miles. It was beautiful and imposing and utterly intimidating. The Dowager Duchess of Blackthorn waited in the drawing room, a silver-haired woman whose regal bearing made the Dowager Duchess of Somerset look approachable. She examined Elena with pale blue eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Ward, my son has told me much about you." "Your Grace," Elena curtsied, refusing to let her nervousness show. "Thank you for receiving me. I didn't have much choice. Adrian was quite insistent." The dowager's gaze shifted to her son. "Leave us. I wish to speak with Miss Ward privately." Adrian looked reluctant, but Elena nodded. This was a battle she'd have to fight alone. Once they were alone, the dowager gestured for Elena to sit. "I'm going to be blunt, Miss Ward. I think you're entirely unsuitable for my son." Elena's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression calm. "May I ask why?" "You have no family name, no fortune, no connections of your own. You've been at the center of a major scandal, and you seem determined to challenge every social convention that exists." The dowager's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "Adrian could marry anyone. A duke has his pick of the most accomplished young women in England. Why should he settle for you?" "He shouldn't," Elena said quietly. "If he's settling..." The dowager's eyebrow rose. "Explain." "Your Grace, I have no illusions about my social position. I know what I lack in terms of breeding and connections. But I also know what I offer. Honesty, loyalty, genuine affection untainted by calculations about title or wealth. I didn't pursue your son. I didn't scheme to catch his attention. I simply told him a truth that saved him from a disastrous marriage, and everything else grew from there. How convenient for you." "Not convenient at all, actually. It cost me my home, my reputation, and weeks of my life wondering if I'd survive the scandal." Elena met the dowager's gaze steadily. "If I'd wanted convenience, I would have stayed silent and remained invisible. I chose truth over safety. That choice brought me to your son, but it wasn't calculated." The dowager was silent for a long moment. "Adrian's father and I had an arranged marriage. Very proper, very suitable. We respected each other, managed the estates well, produced 3 healthy children. It was a good partnership." She paused. "It was also loveless and lonely. Is that what you want for Adrian?" "What I had. I want him to be happy, genuinely happy, not just properly settled." "And you think you can make him happy?" "I think we make each other happy. I think we challenge each other to be better, braver versions of ourselves. I think what we have is real in a way that goes beyond social suitability." Elena's voice strengthened. "But I won't force this, Your Grace. If you truly believe I'll hurt your son, if you think I'm not worthy of him, then tell me now. I'll walk away. I care about him too much to trap him in a marriage his family despises." The dowager's expression shifted, surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. "You'd walk away?" Even though you love him? Elena's breath caught. She hadn't said the word aloud, not even to Adrian, but hearing it spoken made her realize it was true. Yes, because loving him means wanting what's best for him, even if that's not me. The dowager rose and moved to the window, staring out at the grounds. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Adrian's father was chosen for me. I never had the luxury of choosing my own path, my own partner. I've watched my son live the same way, doing his duty, accepting his obligations, never allowing himself to want something just because it made him happy. She turned back to Elena. Then you came along, and for the first time in his life, he chose. Not wisely, perhaps, not prudently, but genuinely. Your Grace, I'm not giving you my blessing, Miss Ward. Not yet. You'll have to earn that. The dowager's expression remained severe, but something had thawed in her eyes. But I'm willing to give you the opportunity to try. That's more than I've offered anyone else who's pursued my son. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. Over the next 3 days at Blackthorn Abbey, Elena met Adrian's sisters, Margaret, who at 19 was everything Elena had been told, rebellious and clever and desperate for a different life, and Catherine, younger at 16 but sharp-eyed and observant. Both welcomed Elena with an enthusiasm that contrasted sharply with their mother's reserve. You stood up to Vivian Ashcroft in public, Margaret said over tea. Do you know how rare that is? How brave? She's terrorized half of London with her cruel tongue. I had help, Elena said. The Duchess of Hartwell taught me how to survive in your world. It's not my world, Margaret said fiercely. Not if I can help it. I want to study medicine. Can you imagine? Mother nearly fainted when I suggested it, but Adrian says you've shown him that breaking rules doesn't have to mean breaking oneself. That gives me hope. By the time Elena and Adrian returned to London, something had changed. The dowager hadn't declared her approval, but she hadn't forbidden the courtship either. And in the complex language of aristocratic family dynamics, that silence was almost as good as blessing. Christmas approached, bringing with it the season's most prestigious event, the Hartwell Winter Ball. It was the Duchess's annual celebration, attended by everyone who mattered in London society. This year, it would also be a test of Elena's acceptance, of her relationship with Adrian, of how far she'd truly come. You're nervous, Sia, Adrian observed the morning of the ball. Terrified, Elena admitted. What if I make a mistake, say the wrong thing, prove all of them right about me not belonging? Then you'll recover, same as you've recovered from every other setback. Adrian pulled her close. Elena, you've already won. Society has accepted you. The Duchess has made you her protégé. My mother is coming around. What else do you need to prove? That I'm worthy of you. You've been worthy from the moment you chose truth over safety. His hand cupped her face. Stop measuring yourself against their standards. You've already exceeded them. That night, Elena dressed in a gown that made her feel like royalty. Deep sapphire silk that brought out her eyes, cut to emphasize her figure without being scandalous, with subtle silver embroidery that caught the light. The Duchess had sent it with a note. Wear this and show them who you've become. When Adrian saw her, his expression made every moment of doubt worthwhile. You're stunning, he said simply. The dress does most of the work. It's not the dress. His eyes held hers. It's the woman wearing it. The woman who walked through fire and emerged transformed. The Hartwell ballroom glittered with candlelight and jewels, filled with the cream of London society. As Elena and Adrian entered, a hush fell. Not the hostile silence of the Pemberton ball, but something different, curious, assessing, waiting. The Duchess appeared beside them, resplendent in black velvet and diamonds. Ready for your final examination, my dear? As ready as I'll ever be, Elena said. Good, then let's show them what you're made of. The Duchess raised her voice slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement. Many of you know that I've been searching for someone to eventually take over my charitable foundation work, someone who understands both the privileges and responsibilities of power. I'm pleased to announce that Miss Elena Ward has agreed to become my official successor in this endeavor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This was more than endorsement, it was anointing. The Duchess was publicly declaring Elena her heir in matters of social influence. Furthermore, the Duchess continued, I'd like to thank Miss Ward for her invaluable assistance in establishing our new foundation for women in difficult circumstances. Without her insights and dedication, it wouldn't exist. Please join me in acknowledging her contributions. Applause filled the room, not universal, but substantial. Elena felt tears prick her eyes as faces that had once shown only hostility now displayed respect, even admiration. Then Adrian stepped forward, and the room went utterly silent. While we're making announcements, he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom, I have one of my own. He turned to Elena, taking her hand. Elena Ward, you saved me from a loveless marriage. You showed me that integrity matters more than appearances. You've challenged me, inspired me, and made me want to be better than I am. You've already changed my life. Now I'm asking you to share it. He dropped to one knee, producing a ring that glittered in the candlelight, sapphires surrounded by diamonds, beautiful and unexpected. Will you marry me? The world seemed to stop. Elena was aware of hundreds of eyes watching, of the Duchess's knowing smile, of the weight of this moment that would define the rest of her life. But mostly she was aware of Adrian, kneeling before her with his heart in his eyes, offering her everything. Yes, Elena whispered, then louder, so everyone could hear. Yes. The ballroom erupted in applause as Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her. It was improper, too public, completely scandalous, and Elena didn't care. Let them gossip, let them judge. She'd found something real in a world built on artifice, and she wasn't letting it go. When they finally broke apart, the Duchess was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Well done, both of you. Though you might have warned me, Adrian, I could have prepared something more dramatic. This seemed dramatic enough, Adrian said, grinning. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and well wishes. The Dowager Duchess of Blackthorn actually smiled when she offered her felicitations. Lady Pemberton gushed about the romance of it all. Even Lady Caroline Westmore managed a grudging nod of acknowledgement. And there, near the refreshment table, stood Vivian Ashcroft. She looked beautiful as always, her golden hair swept up, her gown elegant. But something had changed in her expression. The calculating hardness softened into something almost human. Elena excused herself from a conversation with Lady Ashford and approached Vivian, her heart pounding. Congratulations, Vivian said quietly. You got what you wanted. I didn't want this, Elena said. I wanted truth. Everything else just happened. Perhaps. Vivian's smile was sad. For what it's worth, I think you'll make him happy. Happier than I would have. I was too busy trying to survive to think about anyone's happiness, including my own. What will you do now? Elena asked. Rebuild. Honestly this time. Vivian glanced around the ballroom. I've accepted a position helping my cousin manage her estate in Scotland. Away from London, away from expectations, a chance to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for society. I hope you find it, Elena said, and meant it. Peace, I mean, whatever that looks like for you. Same to you. Vivian's expression turned wry. Though I suspect your peace is going to look remarkably like a coronet and a political partnership with one of England's most influential dukes. Probably, Elena admitted. Then wear it well. And Elena? Vivian's voice softened. Thank you. For not destroying me when you could have. For giving me a chance to start over. She walked away before Elena could respond, disappearing into the crowd. Elena watched her go, feeling something like closure settle over the wounds of the past months. Everything all right? Adrian appeared at her elbow. Yes, just making peace with old enemies. That's very magnanimous of you, soon-to-be Duchess Blackthorn. The title made Elena's stomach flip. I'm still getting used to Fiancée. Don't rush me into Duchess territory yet. Adrian laughed and pulled her onto the dance floor. As they waltzed, Elena caught glimpses of faces around them. The Duchess watching with maternal pride, Sebastian grinning like an idiot, Lady Somerset nodding approval, even the Dowager looking almost pleased. What are you thinking? Adrian asked. That 6 months ago, I was invisible, a charity case in a gray dress, watching the world turn without being part of it. And now? Now I'm dancing with a duke in a room full of people who finally see me. Elena looked up at him. I'm thinking that sometimes the cost of truth is everything you have, and sometimes somehow it's worth it. Always worth it, Adrian corrected. Truth gave me you. I'd say that's an excellent trade. The weeks after the engagement were a whirlwind of wedding preparations, social obligations, and political maneuvering. Adrian had decided to push his reform legislation through Parliament before the wedding, using his engagement as proof that tradition and progress could coexist. Elena threw herself into the Duchess's charitable work, establishing programs for women's education and financial independence. And slowly, almost without Elena noticing, the scandal faded. New gossip replaced old. People forgot to whisper when she entered rooms. Invitations arrived not out of curiosity, but genuine welcome. 3 months after the engagement, Elena finally accepted her aunt's invitation to tea. She arrived at Thornfield with Adrian beside her. Moral support, though she'd insisted she didn't need it. Lady Cecilia had aged in the months since Elena last saw her. More lines around her eyes, more gray in her hair. She rose when Elena entered, her expression uncertain. "Elena, thank you for coming. Your Grace, welcome to my home." "Lady Thornfield," Adrian said politely. An awkward silence stretched. Then Cecilia said quietly, "Sebastian, would you show His Grace the garden? I'd like to speak with my niece privately." When they were alone, Cecilia's composure cracked. "I've rehearsed what I wanted to say 100 times, but now that you're here, the words seem inadequate." "Then don't use rehearsed words," Elena said. "Just tell me the truth." "The truth is I was terrified. When the scandal broke, when society turned on you, I was so afraid they'd paint me with the same brush, that supporting you would cost me everything I'd worked to build." Cecilia's voice shook. "I chose safety over family, and I've regretted it every day since." "You hurt me," Elena said quietly. "When I needed you most, you threw me out like I was nothing. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends if you'll let me." Cecilia stepped closer. "I saw what you did, Elena, how you fought back, how you survived and thrived. You became everything I was too afraid to be. I'm so proud of you, and so ashamed of myself." Elena felt tears threaten. "I don't know if I can fully forgive you yet. The wound is still too fresh." "I understand. I don't deserve your forgiveness." Cecilia's hand trembled as she reached out, then dropped. "But perhaps someday you might allow me back into your life. Not as the aunt who raised you, but as someone who wants to do better, to be better, because of you." "Perhaps," Elena said softly. "Someday, but not today. That's more than I deserve. Thank you." The wedding took place in late spring, when the gardens at Blackthorn Abbey were in full bloom. It was a smaller affair than traditional ducal weddings. Elena had insisted on intimate rather than ostentatious, and surprisingly, Adrian agreed. The Duchess attended as Elena's matron of honor, a role that scandalized traditionalists but delighted everyone else. Sebastian walked Elena down the aisle, since she had no father, and had forgiven him far more easily than her aunt. Adrian's sisters served as bridesmaids, Margaret making irreverent comments throughout the ceremony that made Catherine giggle. And when Elena and Adrian exchanged vows, promising truth, partnership, and unwavering support, she felt the weight of everything they'd survived to reach this moment. The scandal, the battles, the fears and triumphs. All of it had led here, to this chapel, this man, this new beginning. "I love you," Adrian said as they were pronounced husband and wife. "Not despite the chaos you brought into my life, but because of it. Because you woke me up." "I love you too," Elena whispered, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for standing beside me when everyone else walked away, for choosing truth with me even when it was costly." Their kiss sealed more than a marriage. It sealed a partnership forged in fire, tempered by scandal, and strong enough to reshape the world they'd inherited. The reception was held in the Abbey's great hall, filled with faces that represented Elena's journey. The Duchess holding court, Lady Somerset discussing the Foundation's latest initiatives, former enemies turned tentative allies, and even Cecilia watching from the edges with wistful pride. During the first dance, Adrian pulled Elena close and whispered, "No regrets?" "Only that I didn't tell you the truth sooner, that I wasted time being afraid." "You weren't wasting time. You were gathering courage." He spun her expertly. Besides, I'm a patient man. I would have waited however long it took. Liar, you were ready to storm Thornfield and demand they give you my address. Only after the first week, I showed remarkable restraint. Elena laughed, the sound free and joyful. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined this. Laughing at her own wedding, married to a duke, accepted by a society that had tried to destroy her. But she'd learned something crucial through all the battles. Truth didn't just survive in darkness. It transformed everything it touched. Later, as guests began departing and the celebration wound down, the Duchess pulled Elena aside one final time. You've exceeded every expectation, my dear. I knew you had potential, but you've become more than I imagined. I had an exceptional teacher. You had courage I couldn't teach. That was always yours. The Duchess pressed a small leather journal into Elena's hands. This contains everything I've learned in 40 years of navigating this world. Names, secrets, strategies. Use it wisely. Use it to help others the way I helped you. Elena clutched the journal, feeling the weight of responsibility and trust. I'll do my best to honor your legacy. You'll do more than honor it, honor. You'll transform it. The Duchess's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. They tried to break you, child. Instead, you broke their system. That's the greatest victory of all. As the Duchess departed, Elena stood in the great hall of Blackthorn Abbey, no longer a charity case or an outcast, but the Duchess of Blackthorn, a woman with power, influence, and a platform to change the rules that had nearly destroyed her. Adrian found her there, watching the last guests leave. Ready to begin our life together, Your Grace? The title still felt strange, but Elena was learning to wear it like armor, protection not just for herself, but for everyone who came after her. Every woman who didn't fit the mold, who dared to speak truth, who chose courage over compliance. Ready? Elena said, taking his hand. Let's show them what we can build. And together, they walked into their future. Two people who had survived the worst society could inflict and emerged not just intact, but transformed, stronger, braver, united. In the years that followed, the Blackthorns became known for championing unpopular causes. Women's education, workers' rights, political reform. Elena's foundation grew to help hundreds of women escape poverty and abuse. Adrian's legislation changed labor laws throughout England, and their partnership became legendary, not for its romance, though that remained, but for its impact. They proved that truth, when coupled with courage and love, could rewrite the rules entirely. Elena Ward had started as nobody, an invisible woman in a gray dress, overlooked and underestimated. She became a force of nature who changed everything she touched. And her legacy, built on honesty, sacrifice, and the stubborn belief that right mattered more than power, outlasted the scandal, the whispers, and every attempt to silence her. In the end, they hadn't just survived the storm. They'd become the lightning that illuminated a new path forward, for themselves, for each other, and for everyone brave enough to follow.